Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do 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 do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, everyone. Sorry about the dual intro theme. I welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. You know Dan.
Hello, humans.
Oh, wow, we have a good turnout in the sandbox so far. We have Seth Evans, Looney Tunes, John Martinez, Bad Lefty, Lady Badash, AJ LaFave. I think, am I seeing everyone? If people can give me thumbs up in the sandbox, let me know I'm doing this right. Hermeteorologist, hello, hello, hello. Oh, yeah, it's gonna be one of those streams, I think. Well, welcome back to the show, Dan, as the
Yes, it's been
pseudo
a while.
expert on Saskatchewan.
Yes, I've seen 1.5 YouTube videos on North Dakota, as it were, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. Um, and no, I think that was one of the provinces that I did guess correctly when I was first on your show, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
we were doing the game of like
Mm-hmm.
guessing the
Yeah.
provinces because I do know that one. It's got like it's a name that fits in with a lot of American states in that
Mm-hmm.
region. Maybe people could look into the history of why, but yeah, I was getting a little bit of the sense of the major people running in like the major parties, and it seems
Mm-hmm.
uh, a lot of parallels. Not exactly the exact same as what's going on in stateside, of course, but there's a lot of parallels to where you have um, and not I'm explaining it to you, but at least like what, to my understanding,
Mm-hmm.
one party that lets everyone down, and another party that kind of wants to put everyone down.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's getting closer and closer to that here all the time. Because for those who don't know, BC has finally elected a new, well, re-elected the old government. Um, it's only taken, when was the BC election? Like a week and a half ago or something like that?
so that was gonna be one of my questions.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like a mail-in voting situation here? Because that's what usually slows down the
Yeah.
voting
There
in
was some
places in America that do that.
mail-in votes, I think some call-in votes that they had to tally or something of that sort. And since
Colin,
some
what kind
places
of
do elections via phone, like you can call in these days.
radical Canadian shit is
I
that? Wow.
know, I know. But since like the elections were, some of the ridings were so close, they had to do recounts and be very meticulous about it. Like one, it was only like 20 votes different.
Mm.
But from the looks of it, they didn't just get the 46 seats that they were in the lead with. They ended up with 47 seats, which puts them in a majority position in BC, because it was going to be, they got the 46 seats, and then the Greens had 2 seats, so they would have to form a coalition in order to form government. And then the Conservatives were going to have 45, but now it looks like just barely they squeaked in one of those other seats, because there was 2 elections in particular that were super, super tight. And with a lot of the mail-in votes and things of that sort, they tend to lean more left, which also leads to a lot of people now saying, what's up with this? There's like election fraud going on. Because suddenly, like, where are all these NDP votes coming from suddenly to turn the table?
Get new material. Just, I wish they'd just be like a little bit more creative with their excuses for voter fraud, but no, they're just copy pasting from
Yeah.
the shared like right wing thought bubble that is Twitter, X, whatever. But yeah, no, 13 days sounds perfectly reasonable. California for a long time has always been like, yeah, give us 3 weeks and then we'll give you the results. Thankfully, it just doesn't matter because as a in the winner takes all system, even though California is very red, if you look at land, if you look at population, it's extremely Democrat, always has been, always will be, at least not counting the 1980s when we put Reagan through. But that was only because Reagan had a home court advantage because he's a Californian, not necessarily like, yeah, there was a more Republican time for sure, but Tim Walz is going to get Minnesota too. It's just home court advantage is how politics works. But yeah, it takes 3 weeks for us to actually know the final vote count, which definitely doesn't get relevant for president, but it can get relevant for ballot initiatives. California is a very big like direct democracy in the sense of we vote on a lot of constitutional changes, and so that's where it gets very interesting. It's like, oh no, we're in we're in day 18 of counting ballots and there's no sign of stopping. So 13, that sounds fine.
Well, also another election news announcement here, because I thought this was going to be the last election coverage I was going to do all year. But I will be covering another election.
Ooh.
In Nova Scotia. They called a snap election. No, I'm not covering the big election in North America. I'll be covering Nova Scotia will be having an election on November 26th, and I will most likely be joined again with Mark Joycey, who joined me for the New Brunswick one, because Mark Joycey actually lives in Nova Scotia. And, it's not like Nova Scotia has been in the news recently because of a Halloween party that a bunch of officials went to, thinking it would be fun to dress up as KKK members and even enter the building with a cross.
Was the cross on fire?
Not at the time of entry.
And so what you're saying in defense of their behavior, no, that's wild. What's the vibe of Nova Scotia? Like that's the part of America, at least, where it's like you kind of go either way. On the one hand, you get Bernie Sanders from that part of the country. On the other hand, it's pretty, wilderness.
Well, they
Let's say.
currently have a conservative government, and, maybe not as extreme as some of the other conservative governments, but still horrible. And the premier's name is Tim Houston, and how he did not change it to Tim Horton, I have no idea why. Like, it's just so close, you might as well just go with it. But like also just another province that has been wrecked by conservative leadership for the last while and stuff. So hopefully it'll be yet another seat that gets turned. We'll see, because, yeah, so BC just staved off the conservative government by a seat, although the BC NDP have their own problems with being a little right-leaning in certain topics. And then New Brunswick had their election, and they soundly beat the conservative government there. And I have some videos and things that we can go over to kind of rehash those ones, because the results for Saskatchewan won't be coming in for about in there 45 minutes. That's when the polls close. And we start getting the information pretty fast. So I can switch over to this. And then I do this. There, and just bug me at any moment, Dan, if you see something on the screen that doesn't seem to be making sense to what I'm talking about, because chances are I forgot to share that tab instead.
Happens.
Okay, so here we go. We already have some issues with like who is funding the ads and stuff, so the right-wing Albertans behind the BC election ads. West Coast's proud unmasked activists showed the need for advertiser transparency, says experts. I'm not going to get into this article. People can read it if they want. I recommend you do. It's just, again, to me, this is something I talk about a fair bit on my channel, how the right wing does a really good job of supporting each other across borders, you know, between the United States and Canada, across provincial borders. They do a really good job of propping each other up, supporting each other, helping them out with money and all that sort of stuff. It's super frustrating that we can't seem to get that kind of cohesion on the left, but there are reasons. Part of that reason being the people who are actually on the left, like progressives and things of that sort, well, the liberals who are supposed to be on the left aren't. And they would much rather, behind closed doors, support conservatives than they would actual more left-leaning progressive NDPs or Greens and things of that sort, or even causes. So,
I would imagine too, like at least speaking from the America end of things, is that you don't get a sense, like there's a lot less distance in between a wealthy, conservative backer and even the sort of like populist, non-wealthy sort of, ideologue within the conservative movement in this country and in the United States, right? And so on the left, there's people who have money but they aren't necessarily all that left or political, and then you have people who are very politically engaged who like hate money and they hate capital and they hate those like sort of things. So it's just I think it's a very different coalition because it's a very broader understanding of politics, at least on some aspects of the left, and so it has to account for that in both places. But it's definitely really annoying when you get like you were seeing in that article where I was seeing like out of province groups trying to influence these elections. Like, I'm not sure how Citizens United or any sort of similar things work in Canada, but it's just when you see, I was reading something today. Again, sorry to pull from American knowledge again, but they're trying to make it so the Supreme Court can decide how states run elections. And that's just like a big no-no. States run their own elections, even for federal office. And so they're trying to use every tactic they can in the book. And it's only the conservatives who are like, okay, well, how can we do this with the law? I really want more of the, leftist energy for that. But no, we're too busy boosting. I think Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen are speaking for Kamala Harris right now. So they've chosen a different type of star power.
There we go. Yeah, so this is the current read of the BC votes. So there's still 2 ridings, it looks like, that are being currently counted, even though it was supposed to be done today. And if the leading, which is showing here, turns out to be true, then you'll have the NDP with 47, which gives them a majority by a seat. And as you can see by these numbers, I can't do math off the top of my head, but they're very close. They're very close. And
yeah, you're looking at like 30,000 votes for between the conservatives and the NDP.
It's just, it's so disturbing considering how bad that party was with their candidates and everyone involved that it was this close.
And I bet that it was, like you were kind of saying earlier, it was only able to be this close in part because of the NDP tacking to the right in order to, stave off some ground, which is detrimental to the movement overall.
Yeah, well, they thought that they could get the centrist votes because you might notice here there's no Liberal Party, which is in their main stain in Canada. Stay.
Well, there's the Greens.
Yeah, there's the Greens. But there was no Liberal Party this election, so they thought that if they went more centrist, they could pick up those votes instead. But no, that's not how it works because time and time again, we've learned in this country that liberals don't toggle between liberal and NDP. They toggle between conservative and liberal. And even here in Ontario, a couple elections ago, when Doug Ford first got into office, when the Liberals realized that they had no chance of forming government, they put their support behind the Conservative government, not the NDP, which probably cost the NDP that election. Just so frustrating. But
What were, do you think, some of the flashpoint issues that you led to the, the results in British Columbia? Like, was it a fear of migrants coming across the southern border? Was it? I'm just being kind of tongue in cheek with this. Is it a cultural kind of like counter reaction?
Immigration is becoming a bigger deal here because the liberals have decided to start saying, yeah, we're totally letting in too many immigrants. The thing that was doing, it's the cost of living has skyrocketed in this country, especially housing.
In many countries, yeah.
When it comes to unhoused people and people living with addictions, living with mental health issues, as opposed to actually dealing with those addictions or mental health issues, they just say, okay, we're going to lock them up. And the conservatives tend to be a little bit stronger on that. Plus, they just totally leaned into every conspiracy theory you could think of, and ones that I didn't even know existed, like VAIDS. That's apparently a thing. Vaccine-induced
They. Oh,
vaccine-induced AIDS.
oh God.
Yeah, the vaccine was giving you AIDS, but don't worry because if you had COVID, if you just pointed a blow dryer up your nose, that's how you cure it. Tons of
Again, I'm sorry.
racism.
Your conservatives are just like Tony Hinchcliffe was trending because he's just like the B team or the C team for Joe Rogan. He's like
Mhm,
not even a good comedian.
mhm,
But like we had the bangers in America, like
mhm,
injecting bleach. Like that's what are we doing with the blow dryer? And what are we doing like 4 years removed from the? Uh,
mhm.
yeah,
No, a blow
I'm just
dryer
saying
up the nose at 52 degrees Celsius, which you won't know what that
it's hot.
means. It's damn
Actually, no,
hot.
I'm English. I'm English. I grew up British. I know that's very hot. So so
It's
so
damn
I can at least do that.
So just
You know what?
dry
God
out your
bless.
sinuses.
Oh, I thought they were just gonna dry out their anuses, but like either way.
So, also, like you look at the conservative premier of Alberta recently, she, during a press conference, meeting, talk, whatever, somebody asked her, it's like, oh, what are you doing about the chemtrails being sprayed over Edmonton? And she's like, I don't think there are chemtrails being sprayed over Edmonton. And the audience goes, boo. So then she immediately says, but if there are, it's the United States Department of Defense that's doing it. Leader of a province did
There's
that.
no hope. There's no hope. There's no hope.
No hope.
I mean,
Mm.
I wouldn't be that hopeless. I wouldn't be that jaded about it, but that's just very it's cynical. You kind of just hate to see that sort of
Mhm.
cynicism because that cynicism can only exist in a space and an environment
Mhm.
where the sane people have given up. Because I think there's
Mhm.
like a silent majority of people who are just like chemtrail, like what are we doing here? But I think again to maybe draw parallels that may or may not exist with America or not. And this has been something I've heard from my friends in England and a lot of parts of like Western Europe is that the cost of living, people are much more concerned about putting food on the table and making
Mhm.
sure they can afford rent than they can be to really get involved in like the political universe.
Yeah.
And as a result, you get cranks um, who are able to make up for that vacuum
Mhm.
of space,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate.
But we have here, I haven't watched this yet, but Rachel Gilmore is a fantastic independent journalist here in Canada. And so she's tackling the BC election being stolen issue that has recently come up. Hopefully the audio works on this fine. We'll find out.
Oh my God, they're actually doing it. A bunch of Canadians are doing, I shit you not, election denial. So I got in touch with the people who actually administered that election. And it's time for a fact check. See, the election in the Canadian province of British Columbia was and is close. Really close. So what are the worst people on the internet doing? Sowing mistrust and division with little to no evidence, of course. Take David Parker, an Albertan political operative said to have serious sway over Premier Danielle Smith, who is tweeting things like this. There's also National Post columnist Tristan Hopper, who should have stopped typing when he wrote, "I have no evidence but." Oh, and True North and Rebel News personalities are also going wild with this. So I reached out to Elections BC and asked them about the claims going around. I'm going to focus on two primary false claims. First, that a bunch more votes suddenly appeared. Yeah, they did not. They were there the whole time. According to Elections BC, all absentee and mail-in ballots have to go through additional integrity checks before being counted. That's a good thing. Like making sure the voter was actually eligible to vote and that they didn't already vote. This information is available without opening the so-called secrecy sleeve within each ballot, which contains the vote itself and isn't opened until the final count. Elections BC doesn't know the complete number of mail-in and absentee ballots until they've been screened. But they did provide an initial estimate the day after the deadline. After further screening, their initial estimate of 49,000 increased to 66,000. Once again, these didn't suddenly appear. They were there the whole time and just hadn't been screened yet. The other thing people are freaking out about is the idea that some elections officials took ballots home. But they failed to mention all the safeguards in place. See, at the end of each day of advanced voting, cast ballots are secured in a ballot box that is sealed and signed by elections officials and scrutineers. Then it's securely stored in the district office. But if that isn't possible, like in some rural ridings where the district office is just too far away, ballots are securely stored at a senior election official's home. Elections BC told me this maintains the chain of custody. And remember, that ballot box was sealed in the presence of several witnesses who signed it. And if that person still decides to meddle with that box, they'd not only be violating an oath that they swore, but also face up to a $10,000 fine and up to a year in prison. So don't let the attention seekers of the internet freak you out. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the slow, boring, unsexy process of democracy in action. What do you think of all this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that seems very consistent with what how it goes in the United States. I think the state of Georgia, which was a flashpoint for Donald Trump trying to find 11,000 votes, they recently were criticized for doing major like voter purges and possibly getting rid of legitimate people from their voter rolls. Totally. They did an audit to find out how many attempts at voter fraud there were out of all the millions of people in Georgia. 20.
Mm-hmm.
And they caught him. There was nothing within that realm that was close. All these cases of like widespread voter fraud, like Elon Musk saying that Democrats are importing in migrants into vote, which again makes no sense because if you are undocumented, you can't vote. Even in states like California, where you can get a driver's license, your driver's license does not, like, you have to type in your driver's license in order to register to vote in California. And that's just one of the easier ways to just say, oh, you have one of the licenses that are given to non-citizens. Sorry, you can't vote. End of conversation. But we live in a conspiracy-driven country where, yeah, all of your usual suspects, your True Norths, your rebel media, I can't believe they're still around. Of course, they're running away with that stuff.
Yeah. Just want to show this because I was mentioning it earlier.
Which slur?
This is the, a group of people decided it would be a great idea to dress as members of the KKK for Halloween and attend the event at North Sydney Firefighters Club in Sydney, Nova Scotia. They were even allowed to bring cross inside with them. NSFFC has since been released a minimal apology.
And wait, remind me, what's the NSFFC's like relationship to
Don't even
politics,
know
or are these
who
like
they
political?
are.
Yeah, because like if they're like related to political officials,
Oh,
which
Nova
wouldn't surprise me
Scotia
if I think
Firefighter Club.
that. Okay, I mean, it's not great.
Yeah.
It definitely shows you the environment that's there, but I mean, you have people of all sorts of very varying, interesting opinions who are in first response, law enforcement, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
I'm not giving it a pass, but I'm just saying, like, okay, well, I would be a little bit more angry about if it was like someone who was like
Mhm.
actively running for office
Yeah.
in that particular
Well,
area.
speaking of racism and running for office, there was this that happened again in BC. BC Conservative candidate uses racial slur to describe Indigenous peoples on election night.
Well, they've already voted anyway, so that's
Yeah.
you can just let it out at that point.
Yeah, this is from
Um,
APTN News about this particular candidate. I haven't watched this yet, but it's a short video. A BC Conservative candidate who made derogatory comments about Indigenous peoples on election night more than a week ago is now facing calls to be removed from the party. Here's what was said, along with reaction that followed. And APTN News is a fantastic source to follow for Indigenous peoples covering news that is relevant to them.
is it supposed to be sound? Because
I
yeah,
haven't,
not here.
yeah.
First reported by the
All good.
Vancouver Sun on the night of October 19th, Vancouver Island University student Aliona Latsanik was interviewing Conservative MLA candidate Marina Sapochnikov. When the student mentioned she was majoring in Indigenous studies, Sapochnikov replied by saying, "They teach you all this BS," adding, quote, "It's all a lie. They're rewriting Indigenous history. Like Indigenous people, they were hunters and gatherers. They make them some enlightened people. They didn't have writing. They didn't have an alphabet. They tell you that they have some foods made of wheat, whatever they call it. They didn't have wheat. They didn't grow anything. They were very simple people. They fought each other." When the student told her she had a very Western-centric point of view, she replied, "They didn't have any sophisticated laws. They were savages. They fought each other all the time." Sapochnikov went on to say, "Europeans brought science here. Now they teach you that some kind of indigenous knowledge. What is indigenous knowledge?" When the student challenged Sapochnikov's points, she replied, "Not 100% were savages. Maybe 90% were.
Not
And
all.
indigenous people didn't have science or a wheel." Sapochnikov also denounced the BC NDP government's adoption of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, claiming it has turned non-Indigenous people in the province into second-rate citizens. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip of the Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs called her remarks sickening. He also called for Sapochnikov's removal from the Conservative Party. BC Conservative Party leader John Rustad condemned Sapochnikov's comments, saying they are inaccurate and inconsistent with the party's values.
Oh no, they're
Rustad
right in
did not
line.
say if she would be removed
I was gonna
from the
say
party.
like that's a promotion
Sapochnikov, who
for the
is a
Conservative
medical
Party.
doctor,
Actually,
is behind her NDP opponent by 113 votes, following a recount on Saturday. So far, she has not made any public comment about her remarks.
yeah, it seems like the remarks make her right at home within the conservative movement, but there was just it was such an onslaught of. I mean, again in America, I was actually expecting worse slurs than just savages, but it was just like an onslaught of all these ridiculous things of, oh, there were no societies, there were no cultures, there was no alphabet or written language was a really funny one. The idea that a lot of, I mean, half of the provinces and a lot of the states in the United States are named for indigenous names
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of they have knowledge of the land, so like a lot of the different like styles and methods for tending to the land and growing food the Europeans got from the indigenous peoples, First Nations peoples. And the thing that really got me though, which is the thing should be the obvious ones, oh, the indigenous people were savages, but the European colonizers, the settlers, they were the lawful ones. It's always the biggest tell. It's
Yeah,
always the
yeah.
biggest
It's
tell
the
that
genociders that are, the non-savages. It's the genociders that are that.
yeah, manifest destiny was a thing we wrote on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even read. Like that's the weird sort of justification they're making.
And they do
Which
this
is funny
like
to me.
after the fact that when the settlers first got here, they would have all died if it wasn't for the help of the indigenous peoples. Like
I think it's Apple that's making an Oregon Trail like remake or movie or something. So yeah, died
Mhm,
of dysentery is going to be a whole lot of that.
mhm. Yeah, like just regular like the settlers didn't know what they could eat. There was diseases, scurvy from traveling over the ocean, not being able to deal with the cold. Like there was all this sort of stuff that most of them would have just died if it wasn't for their help. It is absolutely disgusting. Like the amount of cultures, the rich cultures that they had, and the cities and the communities, and the different languages. Like it is
The,
just.
the racism and the ignorance combined is really something. And yeah, like I'm a little bit too numb and jaded to it,
Mhm.
but it's still surprising every time. Like, because it's just it's a blatant ahistorical view. It's I
Mhm.
don't care to learn or attempt to enlighten myself with the actual history of the matter, because knowing things is gay.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not putting words in her mouth, but like I'm sure she's a hop, skip, and a jump from that opinion too, or at least her constituents are.
Mhm. And, depending on the different bands and stuff like that, they had their own rules of law and things of that sort. In my area, you have the Six Nations, and I took a course called the Road to Reconciliation Begins with the Truth, and it was taught by an Indigenous woman who went over some of the history in the past and how basically the system that they had in place for like elections and things of that sort was actually very closely copied by the Americans when it came down to it. And, that instead of a Supreme Court, they had elder women that would be like, nope, time for this chief to come out or be kicked out or a new chief put in and things of that sort. And they had different councils and they had different ways of dealing with people who were not healthy in the communities and stuff. Like it wasn't just lawlessness. And they probably, it was more along the lines of restorative justice versus, just lock them up and punish them.
Mm.
But of course, there were wars between different bands, there was slavery between different bands. Like it's still,
Europe was notably missing all of these
yeah,
things.
yeah, like those types of things still happened. But if you look at what was happening at Europe at the time, it's, you know,
Like all of the European history they
mhm,
want us to learn is basically like colonization and
mhm,
sexual violence and slavery, and they're like, we're proud of this.
yeah,
Meanwhile, other people are savages for doing this. Or the defenses, um, why do people get all that worked up about slavery? Because the Africans
mhm.
had slaves. It's just like, yeah, I can't.
Eh,
Absolutely, sort of like idiotic sort of ways of thinking.
and it's just this
I don't even have to like
complete
entertain it.
and utter, like they don't want to change. They don't want to accept people as equal. They like this hierarchy. They like this status that they think they have, that they're somehow, better than a certain group of people for nothing other than their skin color. Like they like it, which is why they so refuse to leave from this type of status and stuff. Because if they had to compete with everyone equally based on merits, they've got nothing to give. Like there's nothing about them that makes them, leaders or intelligent or anything. It's all these societal constructs that they put in place. But if they actually had to compete with everyone on an even field, they would never have any power, any, superiority or anything along those lines because they're so unspectacular, all of them.
That's so right, and I like the way you frame that, because I build off of that and saying it's that mediocrity. It's that rather than going through the work of um, challenging one's views and challenging one's prior knowledge, it's much easier to just side with the people who have already decided that they're correct, and they've decided they're correct because they're just simply number one. And anyone who disagrees, rather than having an actual reason, is just triggered because they're not on the winning team.
Mhm.
It's that is what I spent so much of like the first early years of the Trump administration trying to follow the false sort of idea that was being perpetuated in a lot of liberal media at the time, that like there had to be some rational thinking behind not actually necessarily rational thinking, but like there had to be an educational idea behind Trumpism. There had to be like a theory, and yeah, there is a theory and a prognostication to all that, and a lot of it's aligned with fascism throughout history. But for the everyday regular person, they could be convinced, or they could look aside to the fascism, but it's just so much more simple than that. They just want to pick a team, and they want to pick what they think is the winning team, and they don't really a lot of folks don't view politics any differently than they do playoff season of their favorite sport, truly. And that's the liberating thing that I mentioned this in a lot of other contexts. It can actually make the process of persuasion a little bit easier if you're careful, because yeah, you're no longer searching for some sort of theory or school of thought, because very clearly these people don't care about the school of thought. They just care about the comfort, the racism, the ability to feel good and feel like they're on the winning team without having to do any of the work to do that. And even the people who are like quote unquote enlightened, who care about the world and want to do these other
Oh my
things,
God,
you
they're
very rarely
actually
hear
doing
those
it.
kind
A
of
bunch
people,
of Canadians are
unless it's like
doing.
me.
I shit you
Like you
not.
very rarely hear those kinds of people refer to themselves as enlightened, refer to themselves as great. It's like a constant sort of humbling knowledge of learning and understanding and addressing your biases that is just fundamentally um unappreciated. It's just like a lack of intellectual curiosity that really highlights the Republican or the conservative movement across the English speaking world.
Well, there is a follow-up from the New Brunswick one. That's some good news again, because in that
Yeah, let's not be all
province,
depressing or anything.
it's just there is a bit more that I want to get to, and then cover some Saskatchewan stuff because the polls are closing in about 20 minutes. But I want to set people up. But I wanted to follow up with New Brunswick because it is positive, because the Liberals got in. Again, not a fan of the Liberals. It was just so much better than the BC or the New Brunswick Conservatives, who put in like laws against for school children to be outed to their parents if they're trans and things of that sort. And also, there's going to be hope now that maybe an abortion clinic will be opened up again in New Brunswick, because all of them were defunded and shut down. But we have this. So, gender ideology policy in New Brunswick schools headed for change under new premier.
Year-long battle between the New Brunswick government and child and LGBTQ advocates may soon be over. Liberal Premier designate Susan Holt will be implementing a new school gender identity policy. So let's take a look at the changes. The current version of the policy prevents school staff from using a child's chosen name and pronoun unless they get parental consent.
And this was even unofficially, like just in the classroom, casually with the students. We're not talking about changing documentations or anything of that sort.
Rule only applies to gender-related name changes and only to kids under 16. The new policy Holt plans to adopt was recommended by child and youth advocate Kelly Lamrock. It would require school staff to respect all students' chosen names and pronouns for those in grade 6 and above. For younger children, name and pronoun changes would be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Lamrock's policy says school staff should encourage communication between the child and the parent. They should also not question a child's choice to revert to a previous name and pronoun, and that they should provide clear information about the policy to parents. Lamrock says this takes into consideration the right of parents and students.
I don't think it's harmful to remind people that teachers do try and connect kids to their parents and don't suggest medical advice, and do support kids if they say, you know what, actually, I think I'll change my name back. Look, if that's reassuring to people.
I don't get the music in the background for this CBC News thing, and I'm just worried that they do that so that if I do this, then they get mad at me. But it's like this weird, campy, upbeat music in the background of this that just doesn't seem to fit the mood.
I was
What's the harm in
watching
putting
like
the policy?
Business Insider and a couple of these other like CNBC sort of, they've all taken to this Vox explainer style way of doing their regular videos. And yeah, I've noticed it too. It's just really, it doesn't really do a lot for me. But I just like, I'm sure you've mentioned this a lot, being one of the folks on the left who's done a really great, consistent job of making sure that the voices and stories about people who don't fit in the gender binary are like highlighted. Um, so like I'm saying, like I'm sure you've mentioned this, but this perverted framework that conservatives have that, oh, teachers and the governments are trying to trans your kids. It's like, no, kids often find that they are most able to experiment with different identities and figure themselves out when they're not at home, when they're
Mhm.
not around helicopter parents who, you know, some in the worst case scenarios can be, through their confusion, through their ignorance, the source of a lot of abuse that you know, children would unfortunately feel. And so yeah, I think for younger kids who will like want to change their name or go by identities and maybe it has nothing to do at all with gender identities and stuff like that, like you do a case by case basis. But I think this approach is really good because at a certain age, when people are making these big identification changes, I think that can be like a really younger age for like middle high school, um that experience that should be, you know, ideally you have parents who are going to be okay with that, but a lot of times a kid will come to a school and that's the only place where they can be safely
Mhm.
themselves, and so that has to be balanced. That is what any advocate is really talking about here. It's about the mental health of kids. It's to make sure that kids do not self-harm while they are going through these the many changes that kids do. And so the fact that it's always taken to this projection that it's somehow the people who are looking out for the mental health of kids in general, but especially non-binary youth, are the ones who are obsessed with children's genitals and
Mhm.
not the party that's like, we want to do like junk checks
Mhm.
before every sort of high school sporting event.
Yeah.
As like, yeah,
Yeah, we'll get into
such
some of
weird
that with
projection.
Saskatchewan when I start covering some of the articles that I have in line for Saskatchewan, because they're worse when it comes to the gender policies in their schools. But
The greatest thing we
Sorry,
can
sorry to
do,
interrupt you.
I think, for kids who are going through some of these tough questions is calm the adults down and build as big a consensus. I'd like to go back to an age where this isn't political. And if a rhetorical nod to legitimate concerns and questions makes 80% of people feel comfortable, instead of saying, well, we got 51% of the votes and you got 49, so now we get our way, I think consensus is a good thing on this.
There are still 2 active lawsuits against the province about the current policy. There are also 3 union grievances from teachers and school psychologists, but all of these issues may become moot in the next few months.
yeah,
I just gotta say, like, they interviewed the guy they interviewed. He didn't really seem like the biggest advocate.
Mhm.
He also didn't seem like the biggest crank, but a lot
Yeah.
of his framing was, hey, well, you know, if kids decide that they want to change their mind about this, then we should definitely let them. It's like, that's not really the,
Well,
yeah.
I think what he was more going for is that it's okay to allow children to go back and forth, as opposed to like, well, you said that you were a girl, now you must stay a girl because that's what you said. And just let kids be a little bit more free to be flexible. Like if they
Fluid.
fluid, yeah. To not be like, basically not chide the child for changing their mind, I think is what he was going for. To just let
I'll
them be fluid and flexible and go back and forth if that's what they feel they want to do.
I'll hope that benefit of the doubt. I have no
Mhm.
context to that person.
I don't know him either.
The other thing that rubbed me the wrong way was like, I want to get back to when this was never a political issue, and I'm like,
It's
when
kind of always
was
been
that?
political. But here we have the Saskatchewan government use of notwithstanding clause school policy could overshadow fall legislative sitting. So basically, they did the whole gender ideology in school things, but they knew that this was going to get challenged in court because it's unconstitutional. It goes against children's rights. So they pulled the notwithstanding clause, which supersedes the Supreme Courts here in Canada. And it's kind of like the nuclear option and say, no, we're going to do it anyway, even though we know it's violating the rights of these children. And there's literally nothing you can do about it for the 5 years that it's in place.
Puritanical dictators.
The The government's bill invokes the notwithstanding clause as it pertains to both certain sections of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Saskatchewan Human Rights Code. It also includes a section that aims to protect the government, ministry, and members from legal action stemming from the new law. Bill 137 will not follow regular course through the legislature. Normally, bills are introduced in the fall, debated, and eventually passed in the spring. Instead, the government made an unprecedented move to call an emergency session to have the bill introduced and passed in a matter of days. So instead of like taking on unhoused people, like that's an emergency, or maybe addictions or mental health, those are emergencies. Nope. It's the handful of trans children in school that's the emergency that we need to call session back into place so that we can take away the rights of these children, the most vulnerable children in the province.
It's an immediate diet thing too, because we're talking about a politician who was like did a quick like Euro step and started talking about like contrails or chemtrails or whatever, right? And knowing that politician in that moment kind of had to pander to the cranks because that's like deeply ingrained in their audience. But that's just even like the most cynical ones who like are a little bit knowledgeable of what they're doing. There's a whole bunch of politicians who believe the stuff that they're actually being fed through this, slop news machine. And so, yeah, they unfortunately believe that these are the number one issues facing Canadians and, people in general. And it's all this liberal plot to take down the man and make it so you can't see your kids that you've been divorced from and lost in the settlement. It usually ends up going towards the no-fault divorce stuff, but yeah,
And it will get worse if Scott Moe, that's the, I never get over how white the white male names are of the premiers of this country. Tim Houston, it was, we have Scott Moe, Doug Ford, Dave Eby, John Rustad was the person for the Conservatives there. Blaine, what was his first name? Very super like stereotypical white names. But here, Scott Moe. Blaine Higgs, yes. Scott Moe will get worse if he gets back into power. So Saskatchewan Party would introduce change room policy if reelected. So this is the whole, we're going to ban, as they say, biological boys from using school changing rooms with biological girls if it forms government on October 28th. So it's never just about like, oh, well, now we can force teachers to misgender students, or we out them to their parents if they're trans and they don't feel comfortable going out to the parents. But it's now we're going to do this as well. And then it's going to be this and this and this. And they keep on adding on to it and adding on to it. And so they would like to have a little trans girl be forced to go into a change room with boys.
Because that's a safe situation.
Yeah. And it's always in that direction that you see this language around. They never say anything about the trans boys in the boys' change room. It's always the trans girls. There's something sus about them going into the change room. It's so disgusting that this is still, we saw the pushback in the States from it with everything that was happening there. And we now have the reports and the studies out because of the contrast in the states of the red states versus the blue states, and how they actually see, suicidal ideology, suicide attempts and rates have gone up in red states that have implemented these types of policies. And here we are up in Canada saying, yeah, so we see that and we're going to do that too. So there's a lot on the line. If Scott Moe gets reelected, there's a lot on the line for a lot of very vulnerable people in that province. And I just like to remind people this. Scott Moe was responsible for the death of someone. And he still got to be premier, never really faced any consequences for it, nothing. He There's no evidence he was drunk at the time.
I think if I was remembering from the one of the videos you had sent over, kind of detailing a little about this.
Mhm.
Scott Moe had a previous driving while intoxicated case before this,
Yeah.
and there wasn't, I'm not sure if there was like a breathalyzer or blood test or any sort of that kind of thing done on the scene of this one, but yeah, all Scott Moe has just said, I have to live with that every day of my life, and I just have regrets about
Yeah.
it. I'm like,
And it took him
well,
20 years to apologize after he was called out.
yeah, I think the family was like, we never got any sort of interaction. Like it was a full Trump job.
Yeah.
I was just like, not to spoil certain TV shows, but you had certain instances where the ne'er-do-well fail son will do something like this, and because they have power and because they have status, they just kind of paper over it, and everyone kind of forgets it until it's too late.
Yeah. No, I just like to see that there's men like Scott Moe who have gone through all of this and still is premier of a province. But if somebody finds out I did something a little sketchy back when I was a teenager and not thinking straight about something weird or something, suddenly my life will be over. It's just, I say something off color during one of my live streams and I will get canceled. Like, it's
Yeah, or
just,
worse, like retaliated against by people who would be your employers.
yeah.
There's so many different gross ways about this, but while we are waiting for the polls to come in, Saskatchewan, like I literally have like looked at Saskatchewan on a map the past couple of days since like you invited me on to do this. I'm like, are there any fucking cities in this place?
Well, there is Regina.
Regina. And there's
Regina.
like there's a couple, there are like honestly a couple things I saw, places I saw. Saskatoon, maybe that's one. Is
Yeah,
that a big place?
Saskatoon.
Okay.
It's
Have you been to
decent.
any of these places?
I've driven
What makes this better than
through.
Kansas?
Yeah, I've driven through Saskatchewan once when I was on a road trip. Um, it's very flat. Like, it's just, there's the joke out in the prairies that, you can see your dog running away for 2 weeks.
No, it was just I was recently flying to Minnesota, which is really a lot more like Manitoba, and in my understanding, Saskatchewan's like just definitely right over the Dakotas and Nebraska and everything. Dan knows geography, but yeah, it wasn't until we even got to Wisconsin. I'm sorry, it wasn't even until we flew to Minnesota was it anything other than just flat, dry plains.
Well, the population is like 1.2 million people. And I know that's Canadian numbers. So when you add the conversion in, it's 1.2 million people.
I saw in South Park that Canadians aren't a full person, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure about that math, but
Yeah.
that's a joke. It's a joke. I'm joking. There's a place called Uranium City
Probably.
in Saskatchewan.
There's a lot of interesting named cities and stuff, and then again, it's just one of the frustrations when you have people like that one person in BC being so racist towards Indigenous peoples, yet you look at the names of a lot of these cities and towns and they're all Indigenous names.
Yeah,
like even Saskatchewan. It's
literally. Everyone knows Saskatchewan, the French word for flat land. No. Yeah, but it's a gas station and rest stop kind of area of the country. Okay.
Well, just want to quickly check the sandbox because the polls are closing in 60 seconds. But thank you so much, Lady Badass, for the $2 super chat. And she says, new government still caved to parental rights, talking about the New Brunswick Liberal Party. They are the Liberal Party. You can't expect miracles from them. Like I said, I was celebrating the fact that it wasn't the Conservatives that got reelected back in. And the Liberals will be better, but they won't be great. It's
That's what a hamburger's
Yeah.
all about. I'm
And
sorry.
it's not like I think part of it is too, they were using that framing more to just chill some people out because it was for children under like a really young age where there might be some of that, but it's also trying to remind people that teachers try to work with parents when it comes to the well-being of their children. It's not just like, teachers trying to take children away from parents or influence children away from their parents and stuff. But over a certain age, then the parents don't have to be involved at all if the child doesn't want them to, which is, ideal. Because
Yeah, and good.
a lot of people, like you were saying earlier, they feel safer in their friend groups and with teachers and stuff to maybe, try out some of these things, see what the reception will be like. There's a certain level of comfort with them. Like, I know when I was a teenager, I talked to my teacher sometimes too about issues that I was having at home because I couldn't talk to anyone at home about it. Like the
Same.
teachers were there for me. Um,
That's why a lot of
Yeah.
teachers do it. They know that there'll statistically be some kids who they create a safe space for, and like those are the greatest teachers. And it's not always like, oh, I was like pouring my heart and soul out to all these different teachers. They're just like be people who would see and embrace certain interests and like meet you there. And those were those are the teachers who, especially during years that are very formative and difficult for a lot of folks, those are teachers that really help students through, not just academically, but just like socially, mentally. Like those are the of many underpaid heroes.
Yeah. So in the sandbox, people saying hi to you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
So I scrolled up. John Martinez says, yeah, some indigenous nations recognize as many as 6 genders. And he was also mentioning things about the cultures in his area, the indigenous cultures in his area, and the cities and stuff. And it's like, no, what this woman was saying is just racist. It's just racist.
It's like in California where you will have a pretty significant population of people who live in places like Los Angeles and Santa Ana and Santa Barbara and San Clemente, and they'll be racist towards people who speak Spanish.
Yeah. But as Lady Badash says, and I've said this so many times, parents don't have rights, they have responsibilities when it comes to their children. Children are independent entities that have their own rights and autonomy that needs to be respected. And I never get that, like, parents should always be this and this and this and stuff. It's like the vast majority of children who are abused, it's from their parents. Like, home life isn't necessarily safe for a lot of people, unfortunately. So this idea that the parent always knows or should know and stuff like that, it's like, it's nice that you live in a fairy tale world where, parents care about their kids.
You have that awful statistic about like how a lot of domestic violence, sexual violence, it's not the vast majority of it's not strangers on the street, right? Like it's people who have a prior relationship to
somebody you know.
essentially.
Somebody you know, majority of the time family.
On that note, who's got the
Let's
results?
checking the sandbox for more. Lady Badash saying, but in other news, I finally was able to get an endocrinologist appointment in March. I probably said that wrong.
No, that sounds right, I think.
Good.
Yeah, I know that's like good, maybe like a gender affirming care, like on the way towards that. So good to hear.
Yeah. Let's see. People talking about all that. Lady Badash also says that I should be canceled.
It's not a real chat if someone in your chat isn't trying to cancel you.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Endocrinologists work with hormone levels in the body. So yes.
Okay. John Martinez, if a leader killed someone in an accident, they best resign. This happened a long time ago. Like, it took him 20 years to apologize, and that was like 4 years ago.
And like, listen, like
So
I
he should have
think
never gotten there in the first place because he never really showed any remorse or growth or anything from that incident. It's just, yeah.
it's like I think you can. People will have different applications for you know, I don't want to say letting people have for forgiving others for whatever
Mhm.
transgressions they've had in the past. Um, I think that's with you and how you like manage through things, but you have to kind of look through people's character and their
Mhm.
decisions and how they can relate to some of the ways they'll make decisions today, especially in their political career. I think that's relevant. For example, that's kind of why I always do the analogy Gavin Newsom fucked his best friend's wife. Because you can learn about a lot about how he views politics and how he views coalition building when I tell you that fact. That just
Well,
transcends politics.
yeah, like the thing is like if somebody accidentally kills someone, that's tragic. And if they take responsibility, show remorse, you know, try to make amends, do all that sort of stuff, then I would never hold that against that person. But he just seemed to skate by. Scott just seemed to skate by, never acknowledged it. Like the fact that it took 20 years after he got called out before he even made an apology. Like it's just, there's so much. But Jeff,
Exactly. So like
yeah.
the room that like the room that one would have for forgiveness could have been bigger
Mhm.
with an apology that was like 19 and a half years like earlier in the
Yeah.
making.
But Jeffrey Allen, I don't think I've seen you in the sandbox before, so welcome, says Uranium City is basically a mine with a few mines around it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
They just found a bunch of lithium in like I want to say like Arkansas. Like we're done. We're done.
And the skeptical leftist says, LOL, hearing people from other places talk about driving through Saskatchewan and making fun of our city sizes is very funny. Regina is a whopping 300K, while Saskatoon is around 450. I live in Ontario. You're tiny to me.
I don't think I've ever lived in a city as small as either of the cities you've described.
Well, the
sorry.
city I live in isn't huge, but I'm in the middle of like a whole bunch of really big cities.
I'm a metro area kid. It's always been metro areas, so it's like it's just I'm moving to an even bigger metro area, frankly.
Yeah,
so it's just
we
kind
just,
of where I roll.
you just want to go through Saskatchewan and just drive right up Regina.
Listen,
Dirty name.
in America at least, the smaller the cities you drive through, the worse they are to weird people. in a good way.
Yeah,
For them
I
being
did a
weird,
road
and in a
trip.
bad way for the
I did a
people.
road trip across the country, and we drove to Alberta through the States originally, and those small towns be sketchy. Especially to people just passing through. And the friend that I was with, punk skinhead looking. So he got noticed sometimes for I wouldn't necessarily say he was ever noticed for a good reason. But just a lot of people preconceived notions of what he was based on how he looked and dressed.
Can we continue to troll lightly, in good fun, do some light ribbing of all the Saskatchewan viewers by me doing a guess of how many writings there are?
But first, you might want to know Lady Badass says that's right, Sandy, and Dan is correct. And Shemagli says Dan is right.
Okay, yeah.
Looney Tunes 9000, Dan is correct. I don't know what they're talking about. But Bad Lefty
Probably
says,
everything.
I will get Dan canceled one of these days. Dan!
It's easy. But love you, Bad Lefty.
Yeah. Okay. We'll switch back to the news. Because we're getting close
I was
to...
eager to get those results. Like usually the one good thing about states that do mail-in voting is that when polls close, all of the pre-day of voting like just gets released, and so like within 2 minutes, a lot of states will have like 50% of the results in. So I don't know. It's again different strokes for different locations.
I love this little countdown that they have in the corner here. Results will update in 19, 18, 17 seconds. And so you watch it and you watch it, and then absolutely nothing changes.
Yeah.
But
It's like
also,
results will update faster if you hit refresh.
yeah. And also CBC News will be covering it as well. So we can skip back and forth between CBC's news coverage and just the CBC News update.
Sounds riveting.
Yeah.
So can I guess how many writings there are? It's based off of population, right? Not land.
Yeah, population.
Okay. 7.
Bit more than that. We go here. There's
9.
61 seats in the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan, 31 seats needed for a majority.
It sounds like a waste of time.
Yeah. So you have Scott Moe. You have Scott Moe, the current Saskatchewan Premier, Conservative Party. Carla Beck, who's New Democrat, who's they're right now polling shows that they're basically tied. And then you have the Sup Party. What's up?
So if you live in Uranium City, how many like planes, trains, and automobiles do you have to like run to get to vote? Like that's just terrible.
Yeah.
That's just so inefficient. You just gotta cut them up. You don't need that many representatives. I'm sorry.
Well, like the annoying thing is
it's like half the people in the state.
Yeah, the annoying thing is when they show like the electoral maps here in Canada, you'll see like just this massive blue and stuff. And you see that same type of thing in the States where it's like you see the red and the blue and it's like, oh, look at how much. But when you actually condense them down to dots based on population, then you really see how it is. Because there are some areas and ridings like in Ontario that are ginormous. They're huge, but they're all roughly 100,000 people. And so you have like teeny tiny ones within the Greater Toronto area. And but in rural Ontario, Northern Ontario, just these massive areas that are one riding. And if you're trying to become, a leader or elected in one of those ridings, you can be traveling for hours and hours and hours just to get to the next stop.
Yeah, I like to remind people that just the region of LA that I'm from has almost the exact same population as the state of Wyoming. They get 2 senators.
I think LA has the same population as Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
The metro area, like Canada has around like 40 million.
40 million,
people. Yeah. Okay, look at that. I'm trying.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd have to stretch it to like a couple of counties. Like I think the census region might be 40 million-ish, but or at least Southern California.
Or is it, or maybe it's just California.
And it's definitely California. Mm-hmm. California will get you to 40 million, yeah. So what are the?
I think there was one stat.
538. Good.
I think there was one stat I heard once a while ago. So things have probably changed now because Canada recently, our population exploded with all the immigrants. Where they were saying at one point there was more licensed drivers in California than there were people in Canada.
Oh, there's like...
But that was a long time ago when I heard that.
There's like 7 times more guns in the United States than there are people in Canada. So good twisted.
Yeah. Sheldon in the Sandbox says in Northern Ontario, 1 MPP has a territory larger than the country of Germany. Like, these are big ass rings. Like, people in Europe, they never understand what it's like to live in Ontario or Canada and be like, oh yeah, there was this really great restaurant that me and my friend went to, and it was like an 2-hour drive in order to get to, but it was like really totally worth it, and we totally do that sort of thing in Canada all the time. And meanwhile, they're looking at me like, if you did that in Europe, you would have driven through like 5 different countries.
No, literally, like 2 hours is most of England, frankly. And like I think, you know, Texas, massive state. California, very like tall, long state. I don't think we comprehend. I think Canadians can have some appreciation for this, but Alaska's a massive piece of land.
Mhm.
That
Oh,
is
yeah.
a very, very large piece of land.
Like it
And I
just
can't believe that people drive through that like end to end sometimes.
yeah, no, it's like there are places if I wanted to travel in Ontario that would take me more than a day to get to. Like it takes less time for me to go to New York than it does for me to go like if I wanted to go to Thunder Bay, that's a 24-hour drive.
There are people
No,
who
is
will
it Thunder Bay? I'm thinking up, yeah, Thunder Bay or something like that.
come to California for the first time, especially my friends from Europe, and they will act like San Francisco is a 2-hour drive from Los Angeles, and like, no, that's a day. That's at least like 5 to 9 hours, and yeah, that's terrible.
I just got a notice saying Lucy Hayes and their viewers just joined, so thank you. I'm not used
Hello.
to seeing that notice in my sandbox. So
That's
thank you
fun.
for joining. Oops.
I was gonna ask, are there like any predictions? Like, is there
Did I just disconnect myself?
No,
Sorry.
I still see you and hear you, I think.
No, I'm not in my studio. I clicked on something. Am I still live on YouTube?
Oh no.
Shit. I clicked on something and it didn't. Oh shit.
I mean, I've been here the whole time, so
No, I
maybe.
just did it. How I can't open up the live stream again.
No, we're at least
We're not
it
live.
looks like we're still live. Oh no. I just opened it up on YouTube and it looks like we're still live.
No, we're not.
Ah. Okay, then you can hear us and see us.
Oh, wait. Am I still here?
Yeah.
No, okay. Sorry, people. I don't do this all. Okay, I'm back. I'm back on my screen.
All good.
Giving myself a freaking heart attack there because when I switched over to my YouTube tab, it's still doing the donut thing. So hopefully this works. Oh, people are saying I'm live. Okay. 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 That's the last time I randomly click on something during a live stream. But I see, okay, people are still saying that they can see and hear me. Okay, good, good.
Yeah, it's
So you
I
just
think
watch
we're
the
good.
panic over my face.
It's all fine. Like I said, as long as we're recording.
Yeah, I'm recording. I'm recording all of my horror as I do this. Let's see. So we have death of Felipe August saying, "Oh my God, it's Dan." People saying that they see me. Okay, they can see and hear me. See the panic in me. Lady Badash, Lucy is a trans creator from Poland. I want to say very sweet and entertaining. Go follow. Please do. Sounds wonderful. Okay. Okay. I'm done freaking out. Lady Badash is asking Dan, though, what are your thoughts on giving Alaska to Canada?
How about you know what I'd actually do? I would make Alaska part of the contiguous United States.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do like a gerrymander, and like I would pull the coastal parts of British Columbia to connect to the top of Alaska, and we'll find something else to get. Like we'll give you
Mm-hmm.
part of Alaska. Like
Mm-hmm.
you get the Northwest Yukon territories. We'll give you like the really icy bits of it. Like that'll feel good. That'll feel complete, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think we just need more Alaska.
But she's saying you can have Quebec.
We don't have much use for that over in the United States. They just don't gel with the French. It's like oil and water. No offense to them. Some I assume are good people.
Yeah.
You can have a Dakota. We don't need one. We don't need it.
And Auntie K's Tarot says neither Canada or the U.S. should have Alaska. Returning to Indigenous folks, land back, settler colonies don't have a right to exist.
Oh, I think on that standard, like, and this is not to like belittle that point, but I think on that standard, like, neither the United States nor Canada should really be split up in the way they are right now. And yeah, the land back should be applied to all of the different tribes and indigenous folks that were like in these areas. Because yeah, I was again looking at a map of Saskatchewan, and the reservations are even smaller in Canada. That's just ridiculous.
Let's see if they're saying anything.
And also resign. Then it was
I was trying to find like some predictions, and it seems like there's a similar thing where the Sask party is going to have a little bit of a rural advantage, at least people are predicting, but the cities will
it's the same
balance that out. Yeah,
it's the same across the board. Cities tend to be more center left, and then rural areas tend to be more conservative, even though it often doesn't make much sense, because like here in rural Ontario, a lot of the more remote areas are like, but we want immigrants because we have all these jobs out here that nobody wants to stay in town and do, so we want the immigrants coming to town. But then suddenly it's like, no, the conservatives don't want any more immigrants coming in. But then again, neither do the liberals. Well, they cut down drastically on it. So, and a lot of schools that rely on international students are going to be suffering because they've decided to cap that drastically as well, because it's just the liberals giving into a lot of the fear-mongering that the conservatives do.
But I'm curious, I mean, I think you're kind of alluding to it just right there, where liberals are giving into conservative fear-mongering, maybe because they see that as their path to victory, the 31 to win, if you will. But I'm just sort of surprised that, like you're saying, there seem to be more, there's a recognition that immigration is a benefit, especially in the short and medium term, for international schools, like you were mentioning, for local economies. It's not like Saskatchewan doesn't need people. So it seems like there's that recognition, and it could be that recognition among more people. But what do you think is making it close? Is it the scaremongering? Is it these are the only two options, and there isn't really SUP isn't making their case hard enough either? I don't know if they're far right or a far left
they're
party.
far right.
Okay,
they're far right.
Cool.
Saskatchewan United Party. It's a lot of people are hurting right now, like across the board, conservative, centrist, on the left, like everyone is hurting with the cost of living. Our healthcare system is crumbling and stuff, and the conservatives just lie and say we have answers, we have simple solutions, blame these people, those are the people who are wrong, versus no, like there has to be a complete overhaul of systems. Lots of people have to put effort and work into it, and the people at the top who are in the government, the 1%, because most people elected into office are part of the 1%, they're okay with the right-wing slide, because the liberals, their lifestyle won't change much should we slide into fascism. However, if we were to slide more towards socialism, their lifestyles may actually change, and they might not get as much, easy access to money and wealth as what they currently do. Because it'd be a slide away from capitalism, and that's all this government is. As I've said before, the culture of Canada is capitalism. And, the right wing tends to support that more than the left wing. So it's basically you have the conservatives who are strong. They at least act that way, but the liberals don't push back nearly hard enough because one way or another, it doesn't really affect them too much. And they're just worried about their own seats and their own jobs to the point where it's like, no, I'd rather concede to the right wing than to concede to my constituents. If, to a group within my constituents, their rights and stuff like that, if it means I actually get reelected back in. They have more care and concern about their jobs than the people that they're supposed to represent.
Sorry, there's a siren going past me, but yeah, a lot of parallels to the malaise of politics that you're seeing through lack of liberal gusto, lack of liberals really showing the courage to take on some of these narratives from the right wing of a lot of different places about immigration writ large. And it's really easy to, like we've been talking about earlier, it's a lot easier to get people to run into their like fear bubbles than to educate people, because a lot of people just are not seeking to be educated, they're seeking to just feel right. So that's just always going to be an uphill battle for any sort of pro-immigrant movement. But I also don't think that that's like not something that not a valid excuse for like not fighting for it and not making a case for it.
I'm actually surprised that there's been no results in yet. So far, 0 of the polls. Like, did I do this right when it comes to time? Because it says from 8 p.m. And they're 2 hours away from me in Saskatchewan right now. I'm just surprised that there's still 0 polls reporting. Let's see what they're up to say.
Excitement, obviously, and we've been hearing about polls showing more support for the NDP. In terms of volunteers, in terms of staff members, how are you feeling, with those kind of signs pointing to more momentum for you?
Yeah, I mean, Carlo will be the first to say there's one poll that matters. It's the one that's starting to trickle in right now, or hasn't quite yet.
I find this hilarious with the people coming in from the different streams. I have like 34 people watching right now. That's like the most I've ever had for a stream.
That's fun.
And it's for Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan brings in the numbers. Hi, Letterhack.
I still can't name a single place here. It just looks like stretched out Rhode Island to me.
Yeah.
With like as many people.
Yeah. So Letterhack also just came in with some people. So welcome everyone who has since jumped into the sandbox. We have a gripping show for you today. It's the election results for Saskatchewan, a province of 1.2 million people. But later on, November 26th, there's going to be another election coverage that I'll be doing for Nova Scotia. They called it Snap Election. And Mark, who was with me for the New Brunswick election live, he predicted it. He said that there's going to be a snap election probably in November.
I wish we could just do that and not have these long drawn-out election seasons.
Death of Felipe Augustus says, show Dan a map of the internet coverage and then he will learn the geography right quick.
Oh, that'll make a lot of sense, yeah. You can almost do that in America too.
Oh, I'm just actually super surprised because by now, for the other two, there were at least some polls reporting by now.
They've got to they've got to get the votes on, I don't know, Yak or whatever they have
Mhm.
up there because they don't have cars.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take it's gonna take a little bit of time. Not gonna rush them.
Yeah. So easy to get lost when everything is so flat and there's no landmarks anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just gotta navigate by signs.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a nice change to watch this election versus, the election that's coming up next week. Next week and a half? Week and a half? The big election down your side of the border?
No, week period.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be next Tuesday. And we're
Yeah.
talking on a Monday. So yeah, I'm, for the sake of my own gut, not really gonna talk about any of my predictions or thoughts about it on camera.
Well, the thing is that like everyone talks about the polls and predictions and stuff, and it's like, to me, they don't matter anymore because nothing makes sense. Like there's so many factors not being taken into place. Like I don't think polling has even caught up with technology and the fact that a lot of people won't answer their phone if they don't recognize the number. So they're not getting like a wide range of people. I don't think polling has caught up to this day and age. And then there's so many other factors that take a part between like apathy and people. It's like, well, I disapprove of this candidate, but not enough that I'm actually going to go vote against them because there's nobody else that appeals to me. There's just so many factors. And then like in BC, they had atmospheric river that day. There was floods all over the province. So
Yeah,
yeah.
there's, I think the best way to kind of think about it, especially I've said my own kind of rude piece about undecided voters at this point in the race. But the less you try to get into that kind of brain and figure out what you're trying to make sense of it, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's in your deity's hands right now.
Mm-hmm.
Pick one. Um, you have a full
Mm-hmm.
week. There's a lot of
Yeah.
religious ceremonies going on across a lot of different religions. Pick a
Mm-hmm.
god, any god, and just like hold on for that because there's no idea.
Yeah, I'm the type of person, it's like predictions and all that, they don't matter to me. I just want to see what's ahead. Like I don't want people to be even swayed by predictions. Just go out and vote like your vote matters. Like just treat it like your
Especially
vote matters. Go out and vote. But,
vote down ballot for sure.
Yeah. Just deal with what you see in front of you and like until we know who gets in, we'll deal with it at the time. Because even if Kamala gets in, it's not like it's the end of the battle. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And, it's not like if Trump doesn't get in, health-wise, I seriously doubt that he's going to make it another 4 years.
Oh no, evil always wins. He's gonna
Mhm.
make it another 10 years when he
10 years.
abolishes term limits.
Yeah.
There's a place called Moose Jaw.
Yeah.
Who's gonna be the representative from Moose Jaw?
Well, we'll find out shortly.
We have one city in America, I want to say it's in New Mexico, called Truth and Consequences.
Well, there's somebody pointed out in Sandbox earlier in Newfoundland, there is the city of Dildo.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
And I think I can't remember which province it is. Smash and Head Buffalo Jump.
And they thought Letterkenny was a funny name.
But also for people who are in the Sandbox, just to let you know, I have a special Halloween show that I'm planning for everyone. Light on politics, more just unwind. And I think coming up to the election down south, people are going to need a little bit of a distraction. So I will be announcing which book was mine during that little writing derby that I was partaking in. Because I was doing a writing derby where I couldn't reveal which book was mine, but now I can. And so I have a special live stream being set up for Halloween. So Halloween night, come check out my channel for some hangout, fun time, politics will probably be talked about, but it'll be weird because I'll be in costume. So I don't want to get into anything too gritty. Okay, I'm like
That's fair.
totally thinking that I messed up time zones or something. Because there's still no results.
No, they just seem to be like stalling.
Like current time in Saskatchewan.
I think it's Central Standard Time, which is 2 hours ahead for me.
Yeah, they don't do daylight savings as far as I know, so
No, that's right.
what time? No, it says it's 8:35 in Saskatchewan right now, so the polls are closed. This is
It's pretty
weird.
early.
We had some polls at least, like we're talking about polls, not ridings. And so these are like little areas within ridings. And because there's not 1,286 ridings in Saskatchewan. So these are all the little areas within the ridings and stuff. And this time, for both BC and New Brunswick, there were some polls at least reporting, like a bunch reporting by now. It just seems so weird that there's nothing reporting yet. B-Cat says a serial killer was from Truth and Consequences.
Yeah, it was named because of a radio show had like a contest that was like whatever city actually names themselves Truth and Consequences in like the 20s or the 30s, they'll, I don't know, get a prize or something. But yeah, it's New Mexico, so it's all the vigilantes.
Yeah. Jeff Allen says 8:35 there, so
I was seeing someone on Twitter, not really like knowing too much about them, but they said 30 minutes after the polls closed in New Brunswick and they knew who the premier was. 30 minutes after Saskatchewan closes, no information at all. So a lot of other people are noticing this too.
yeah, because like I said, with BC, we're just basically getting the results today from the final results today from their election. But yeah, when I was doing the live stream with Mark, we were actually surprised. We were caught off guard. All of a sudden I looked at the screen. It's like, no, it's been called. Okay. Because it was a very sound defeat by the Liberals. So it was easy to call that. But this is just weird that I wonder if they're actually maybe talking about it. Tune in.
Yeah, Michael.
Going to be a factor in this election, whether the Sask party bill
No, they're not.
was pretty much aimed at older people. They talked about parents, and then certainly this
Polling
would be an
Canada
issue
is
for
saying that
grandparents and other issues
Saskatchewan
that
does
came
not
up.
do
I
electronic
don't
counting,
know
so
whether that
results might
kind
take a
of
while to
issue
come in.
or the way the Sask party was selling that issue was going to resonate with kids that are much younger, which might be a factor. And
Carmen,
yeah, I know media. They're vamping.
Yeah.
They're just like killing time, like we are.
Yeah, Carmen Benoit says, thanks, Sandy, for covering Saskatchewan. Yeah. And I will be covering Nova Scotia November 26th. I will not be covering the election in the States. There's that little election thing that they have coming up. I don't know. Nothing major. It's so unimportant. I'm not covering it.
I'm resting up for that. Folks should check that out. It's going to be a combined stream with Leftist Mafia and Power Report all day. God help us. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I was so tempted. Like if I had money, I was so tempted because the Majority Report is doing the live show that night. And I'm like, I so want to be there, but it's like, okay, the number one reason why I can't travel right now is my cat because he needs daily medication. But then it's like, I don't have the money. That's the other major reason to travel there because I would need a hotel for a couple nights. But it's like, do I really want to be stateside during all of that?
Probably not.
Like, it's just, there seems something a little, worrisome about that. Oh, I think they're starting to get some in now. Let's see. Okay, so leading right now is the Conservative Party with 7 leading, and NDP with 1, and that's only with 20 polls, so that's not much of an indication of anything.
And that's like 20 polls within one riding.
Yeah, or it could be multiple ridings or something. Well, I would imagine
Yeah,
it would be
in America, you just
between.
kind of use polls interchangeably as like.
That would be that's between 8 ridings because it's 7 for the Conservatives and 1 for the NDP. So that's 20 polls between 8 ridings. So it's.
I keep having to remember that SP is Saskatchewan Party and not SUP.
No, SUP is Saskatchewan United Party. SP is Saskatchewan Party.
Yeah, but it'd be a much worse night if SUP were up by 7.
Yeah. What's up, SUP? Oh.
Yeah, that talk about a bad place to do a live show on election night.
Atticus Among
SUP wins
Us.
40-seat majority.
Atticus Among Us says frozen candy bars are superior. Fight me. I'll fight you on that one. Because I just really recently realized that when it comes to Reese peanut butter cups, you want them room temperature because then they're nice and mushy and yummy and better than having them cold and frozen. It's the texture that matters. At least when you're autistic. Oh. Mozart, send lawyers, cats, and money. I don't know what that means. Oh. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming out. Like I said, special Halloween show this Halloween, which is Thursday. Leftist Mafia won't even be on that night. They're doing a Wednesday show. So it's just going to be me. It's just going to be me. And I'm having a fun show. Saskatchewan Party. Boo.
So on the website I'm looking at, there's 20 stations reporting, which I like that word more than polls. There's 1,286 stations in total.
Yeah, they're called
polls. Yeah, just a pubic hair's worth.
Yeah, this
is of stations.
This is not an indication of anything.
Folks, I've seen enough.
Yeah, gonna call it. The United Party is gonna win. The United Party isn't even on here.
Oh, what's the Saskatchewan Progress Party? God bless.
Oh, I'll update in 25 seconds. Who knows? Maybe then it'll be like, wow, half is in.
It looks like the one Athabasca, which apparently there's a lot of attention on maybe like flipping or being in play, has more of the stations reporting than most of the other places, which should be more populated, you'd think.
Well, the ridings are all kind of equally populated.
Well, like, you know, sorry, not equally populated. I mean, like, densely populated.
Densely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would almost...
It's like Athabasca, that constituency, the map I was looking at covers, like, the northern, you know, left quadrant of the entire thing. Yeah, like the orange that's right up there. Like, that's all Athabasca. If I'm, like, knowing this correctly. So, yeah, that's kind of surprising that they're first because they have a lot of, you know, land to get over, but, you know, maybe they're just the only ones who vote with electricity there.
A lot of Saskatchewan slandering going on in this live stream.
I'm never going to be able to go to Saskatchewan.
Like I said, I've driven through it once. When I was on my road trip coming back from Alberta.
And, you know, like, what am I to say? Like I said, California takes a good 3 weeks to vote. if California wasn't already like guaranteed to be a blue state with a
Mhm.
lot of electoral votes because of our dumb electoral college
Mhm.
system, um, then yeah, we wouldn't just like. And it's on the West Coast. It comes in late anyways.
Mhm.
They only just like call it as a technicality. They would otherwise call it like before the polls close. But it's just like
Mhm.
common decency and respect. So they wait until the polls actually close on the West Coast, which extends the whole process out for a long time. But we know how that's going to go.
Mhm.
At least this could be somewhat interesting.
Yeah. Well, trying my best to give some good coverage here. Scott Moe is winning, boo, in his riding. It was so nice when Blaine Higgs lost his riding. He was the leader of the Conservative Party in New Brunswick. It's just nice to see them go down so spectacularly like that. And there was a very tasty sounding riding in New Brunswick, like buttercup confection or something like that.
Huh.
Unfortunately, they went conservative. Cumberland. And 31 seats for a majority. The last poll I saw, they were neck and neck. But again, I don't know how much faith I can put in any polls we see these days. Because there's just so many factors that are random that can't be accounted for. It's like trying to predict where lightning will strike. Like sometimes you can add a rod to make it a little bit more likely, but it still doesn't make it a guarantee.
Yeah, I think it's a fair analogy. There's a lot of like I think we like to believe that polling is, oh, well, we got an equal number of these
Mhm.
people and these people and these people, and we're just counting the numbers and
Mhm.
putting them into a spreadsheet. But no, it's actually algorithms. It's
Mhm.
like you were kind of alluding to earlier. It's has to do a lot with your sample and who actually responds to the polls, which is kind of itself its own self-selecting sort of process. And so,
Well,
um, you'll see in crosstabs since like 2016, they'll make these different sort of assumptions for people they couldn't get enough people they like voted from.
Mhm.
So like they're having a hard time polling younger voters,
Mhm.
and so they're just assuming this X factor. A lot of pollsters are that younger voters are in some ways skewing more liberal, in some ways skewing more conservative, and that's like kind of held up by opinion data. But
Mhm.
I think it's kind of not showing larger things, which like larger trends, which is annoying because these politicians will run off of this polling that's faulty, like you're saying. So
Mhm.
it's um I think it's just important to like lay out some of the reasons why it's faulty.
Yeah.
Is that these aren't just counting the numbers; these are adding weird calculations to the numbers. And that isn't so bad. That's been done
Mhm.
before, but they're testing out so many new calculations that have
Yeah.
been unproven, and it has continually been unproven since 2016.
Yeah. Like,
Not totally
when
unproven.
you
Like
see like,
there's some polls that are pretty accurate,
yeah,
but like it hasn't been like
well,
ironclad for enough time.
like,
And you can't really count 2020 because of
mhm.
COVID. So like it's
Like
complicated.
here in Canada, Angus Reid was one of the more reliable polls out there, but he just showed himself to be extremely biased. Like he was spreading misinformation about church fires here and all this sort of stuff, like complete biased language towards the Liberal Party and stuff like that. And it's like, how can you trust his polls? Like, how can you trust him to be objective if this is the type of stuff he's spewing on social media? And then, you're never going to get an accurate result because look at a place like PEI. Whenever you see polls across Canada and you see them by province, you never see PEI because they don't have a big enough sample size for polls.
Yeah.
So it's just so unreliable. And then people having predictions, and it's like, when it comes down to it, what good is a prediction? Like what does it serve? Just to alleviate somebody's mind so that they're not anxious, which I would just say, stay in the moment. Right now, Trump is not president. Just stay in the moment. But trying to guess ahead of time, like what good does a prediction, like what's the point of it?
I mean, it
Just
does
as
really well for betting, which for whatever
yeah.
reason is now allowed. Would now do political betting in the United States, and
Mhm.
we're gonna not allow it for a while. But you have people who are rubes and idiots
Mhm.
who think that political betting markets are indicative of how people are going to vote, and that's why a lot of the like finance bros, the finance industry, have kind of resolved to Trump likely winning. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna say how I'm feeling publicly again and
Mhm.
jinx it. I'll just say that we will all be watching
Mhm.
next Tuesday.
Yeah, like it doesn't seem to matter much these days what predictions are because like we got Doug Ford back in for a second run after everything he did in his first term and he still won with a majority because so few people turned out. But then you have New Brunswick that just voted and the conservatives there were soundly defeated. So it is just it's anyone's game at this point, I think. Like it could be Kamala, it could be Trump. It's all I can say is I'm single for any American that's looking for a marriage ticket. If you need an out. It's, yeah. Unfortunately, though, your lifeboat is leaky. If you're looking at Canada as a lifeboat, it's a leaky lifeboat.
Could be worse.
Yeah.
Okay. 2.8% of the stations reporting. Saskatchewan party with the 12 leading, and the New Democrats with 1. But again, this is heavily skewed by the precincts,
Mhm.
to use the American phrasing, maybe the stations that are currently reporting. And they could be reporting from certain areas that lean more Saskatchewan party, etc. That's just
Mhm.
like when you have 3% of the vote in and just barely that, you're just like not going to know for sure.
Ted Kendrick, I don't think I've seen you in the sandbox before. Welcome. Says at least you don't live in Alberta, Sandy. Haha. I was born there though. I only lived there for like a couple years of my life though, so it doesn't count. Although with the new anti-LGBTQ plus laws that Danielle Smith wants to put through, I don't know what it would mean for my birth certificate because I got my birth certificate changed to X for non-binary. And she wants to make it so that you can't change it from the gender you were assigned at birth. So I don't think if you've already had it changed, normally those types of things you can't, they don't force you to change back, but still it's Looney Tunes 9000. Did you say you're single for a marriage ticket, Sandy? You see, the thing is that I don't actually believe in marriage for religion or anything else. Like I don't see the point of it. But a transactional marriage I could see, like I have a partner where it's like the only way we can be together is if we're married because they're in a different country.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. But like I don't see the point in marriage for religion or just even like to make it seem like your relationship is more legit or like I don't get it. Like why do you need to go through paying thousands of dollars for a wedding to secure a relationship? Like if you need to do that to secure your relationship, eh.
I just sent you something in the
Mhm.
private chat while we're waiting on the
Mhm.
votes to come in sluggishly. It's a little bit off the beaten path, but it's just
Ah.
kind of breaking. Where Mediasan was on CNN, and they're talking about the state of the race, whether or not
Mhm.
the uh, self-inflicted October surprise of Donald Trump's very fashy Madison Square Garden rally in New York City could possibly have anything to do with the get out to vote
Mhm.
uh, race, that bit of the race that we're in right now.
Mhm.
And Mediasan was speaking on one of these like roundtable arguments on CNN just recently, and one of the I think yeah, the headline kind of gives away the what is said, but it's basically a death threat that one of the people debating Mediasan is given. which is insane. I hadn't seen it yet, so I just like,
May have to check that out. I saw a
yeah,
clip of him recently talking to, who, former attempted vice president, what was her name? I'm thinking Tina Fey, but that's who
Sarah
played her.
Palin. Sarah Palin.
Yeah. He was like talking with her and she was calling him like an obnoxious ass or something like that. And he's like, well, you're racist.
Yeah, it was a whole amnesia thing
Mhm.
for all of the race baiting, the
Mhm.
birtherism that Sarah Palin had done. I saw that today. It was really got to come correct if you're coming for Media-san.
Stephen
But it looks
K.
like they're
Yeah.
calling seats, or like seats to come in. Oh yeah, because they are. It's 12 plus 1,
yeah.
so it's 13. It's 48.
Yeah. I'm showing 36 polls have reported now. Let's see. So Stephen K completely agrees with me. I'm not entirely sure on what, but I'll just say yeah. Maybe about the marriage thing, because that's what I was just talking about. I'm one of those people, like, I don't see the point of marriage at all. As soon as I grew up old enough to learn you didn't have to get married and have kids, I knew I didn't want that. But I don't see the point in marriage. Like, why that somehow makes a relationship better or means that you're now committed or something of that sort. And since I'm not religious in any sense of like a institutional religion or anything like that, I don't see the point in that either. Because I can be equally committed to somebody without being married. It just makes it harder to separate if you're married legally. Although in Canada, you have common law, so same issues.
Right.
Let's see. Ted Kendrick says, why don't these smaller channels have a paid join option? Talking about my channel? I have a Patreon, which is linked in the description box. And also, if you're a patron, you get a sneak peek of my Halloween show. I have posted it for patrons. They get a sneak peek, an early peek at something that I'm going to be presenting in my Halloween show. My Halloween show is going to be a lot of fun, so I encourage everyone to come out and watch that. I'm going to reveal the book I wrote.
That should be exciting.
Well, I'm super nervous about it, actually, because like the only feedback I've gotten on it was pretty bad. Like the person who beta read my book, it was anonymous, basically said that my book was unreadable and didn't even finish it. And part of me is worried that my autistic brain is too involved in my own book, that to me, like, everything makes sense, but then again, I know the motivations behind the characters, I know the world, I know the story. Like, it all seems like, oh no, this is like totally fine, but then somebody not seeing it through my lens might look at it and be like, what the fuck is wrong with your brain? You know? I'm worried that that's what's happening right now, that there's something like severely wrong with my book, but I just can't see it. But it's one of those things that as soon as it's pointed out to me from an outside perspective, suddenly it's like, oh no, I get it now. I get it. But until it's actually pointed out to me, I don't notice it. Like it's just sometimes the way the autistic brain works, because it's like, no, this makes sense. Like, this is the motivation and stuff. And then somebody's like, no, that's totally messed up. Like, this is what is wrong with you? And I'm worried that it's fallen into that category.
Oh, it'll be a good experience to
Mm-hmm.
get it out there and seen by more people anyways. I think a lot of people have that. Just having been around folks who will write for, or like, edit books and edit scripts and things like that. People have a lot of just like differing variations on like what works for them or what they're into versus like anyone else. But also, it's hard to tell. Sorry, but like it's hard to tell just with one other person. If one person thinks it's great and one person thinks it's not as good, then
Well, that's the thing.
that's just like not enough data.
Unless you're into that genre and stuff like that too, it can be very uncomfortable. Like I would say to anyone, read the description of the book, hear what I have to say about the book once I reveal it. Do not read it if it's not the genre you like. Like, just don't put yourself through it. Like, sure, go and buy it on Amazon to support me that way, but don't read it unless you actually think this is a book you'll enjoy. Because it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But yeah, I have a very interesting Halloween show that I'm putting together for it. And John Martinez says, left in the box. It'll be only the 7th time I ever posted on Twitter, as I hate Elon Musk with a passion and rarely ever visit. I don't know if I like the typo in that.
I have a
Left
different related
in the
question.
box.
I will note that for like half a second, the Progressive Conservative Party of Saskatchewan was just like KYS. But like they had one seat and then they just got taken away on all the websites that I'm looking. I'm like, that's funny.
Yeah.
I would love to be a fly on the wall at those celebrations.
Mm-hmm. It looks like some people, because there's a lot of new people in my sandbox right now, who don't know what I'm talking about when I mention my book. So I partook in this, it's called the Inkfort Press Derby. And it's just some authors who got together and decided to have this like fun little thing that people can sign up for. It doesn't cost anything. And what happens is the people who sign up for it were given a made-up cover with a fake pen name, fake title. Well, we're given a cover and a title with a fake pen name. And you rank which ones you like, and then they're doled out to everyone, so everyone gets a different cover. And then you have to write a book based on that cover. Now, the thing is you can't reveal who you are, so I can't advertise it to my social networks and stuff like that as who I am. And it's just to see who can do the best when you all start from scratch. And the requirement is like minimum 10,000 words. There's no maximum. And it goes through the different phases. So you have the writing phase, you have the beta reading phase. There was an ARC phase. So an ARC phase would be for people who are like, the book is just done. I need somebody to look for typos or something, which I didn't participate in that one because I was busy editing my book. And it started in June. So basically in 2 months, I wrote an entire book, and mine is it's a novel. It was well over 10,000 words. I'll give that much away. It's an actual novel that I wrote in 2 months as part of this derby. And so like technically I can tell you which one it is now because the derby is over. And no, I did not win because only 2 people bought my book off of Amazon. And I had not even half the pages were shown as being read from the Kindle Unlimited. So far, I've gotten no feedback on my book from anyone who's read it because nobody has apparently read it, unless the 2 people who bought it actually read the whole thing. So I could technically say it now, but I just want to save it for the Halloween stream because that will be a lot of fun and I'll talk a lot about it then.
Maybe they did read it, but it was just like on one of those Kindles that wasn't connecting to the internet, so it wasn't giving that like information back.
It's part of the Kindle Unlimited, so if you're part of that, you can read it for free or something like that. So that shows you the pages read. But I think if you buy it, it won't show how many pages were read because then that's different. Because the pages read for the Kindle Unlimited matters because you get paid a certain amount depending on how many pages are read. John Martinez. My bad at Left of the Box. I hate typos. I know it was a typo. I just kind of found it funny. But thank you so much for the $3 super chat. From now on, when anyone does a typo in the sandbox, I expect a super chat to correct it. So I should never type in the sandbox again.
I'm trying to find out where Cumberland is because apparently that's close.
Yeah, so like the thing is before I got the feedback from that beta writer, I was like super excited about it, and people who would tune into my live streams would see how super excited I was about it, just desperate to want to talk about it. But then I got the feedback and I'm like so devastated. And I'm like, did I really just trick myself into believing that I wrote something good and it is actually just a hot piece of trash? I don't know. But if you're a patron, you can find out which book it is right now, and you can see a sneak peek of the Halloween show for patrons. But I did write, it was a full novel. It's not, I went well past that 10,000 word limit minimum. Yeah, so I'll post links to that and everything, in the Halloween show. I'm looking forward to the Halloween show. It should just be a lot of fun for people who need like a little bit more of a break from politics. Although whenever I start talking, politics gets brought up. It's just, most of the things I talk about is politically tinged. So I'm showing 36 polls have currently reported, and the Saskatchewan party is still in the lead. But that is a teeny tiny amount of polls. 3, 2, 1, update. Okay, now it's 21 that they're in the lead with. 4 have been elected.
We're still seeing the YouTube feed, by the way.
Yeah, so I'll switch over here. 4 have been elected, apparently. So 4 seats have been called for the Saskatchewan party. And they're in the lead by a lot. But again, it's 120 polls, so only 10% of polls, if I'm reading that right.
Also, none of the cities are really reporting that much. So, like, nothing in Saskatoon, nothing in Regina.
Yeah,
really
if it's all rural areas, then it's a little bit more. Still, I don't like it. I don't like these. I'd want to see it closer at this point. I know it doesn't matter much right now, but still, it's nerve-wracking because there's a lot of vulnerable people, like trans youth in Saskatchewan, who are going to severely suffer under Scott Moe. Never mind what he's doing to the healthcare and the privatization he's planning on doing. Like, it's just all conservative governments across this country are just destroying the country and privatizing it. And like, I just look at the amount of social murder Doug Ford is responsible for, and it's disgusting to think that anyone like him can be elected into office. But here we go with like conservative being elected in, and it's like people just don't seem, well, in Canada, we have the issue of, if it's a conservative province, they'll blame the Liberal federal government for all the things that are wrong, even though they're provincial issues. So things like rent control, housing, healthcare, and stuff like that, they're all provincially run, but they'll blame the Liberals for whatever, the cost of living and all that sort of stuff. But if it's a conservative federal party and a Liberal provincial party, then the Conservatives will then blame the Liberals again. Or if they get into power, then they'll blame, oh, well, it's all the previous Liberal Party. Like, that's all they do in this country. And so you have people who are voting against, their own, what's that word? When you vote against your own interests, yeah. You have so many people doing that because they're being told over and over again by these conservative politicians that, no, it's the other party that's the problem, not us, even though they're completely it. Because politicians are allowed to lie. And if you're a low information voter and you're only exposed to like right-wing media, how do you know they're lying? And that's the thing that pisses me off with Pierre Poilievre so much right now, is that when he's giving a press conference, when he's talking to reporters, he will blatantly lie in front of them or use his little catchy phrases that he likes, like axe the tax and all this sort of stuff. And he's never called out in the moment by the reporters. So if you're a low information voter and you just come across that press conference and you see him say all these things and he's not challenged in that moment, you're not going to see when he's fact-checked. You're not going to see when he's challenged. You're not going to see the pushback. Why would you believe he's lying? Like, why would you believe he's lying about that one thing? Because everyone will say all politicians are liars, but you don't know what they're lying about all the time. So, just so many low information voters in this country that just drives me crazy. Because if people voted based on policy, then the NDP would win across the board because most people would prefer the policy that the NDP want, regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum.
Not for nothing, I also think there's a lot
Mhm.
of like obfuscation of information. Like it's
Mhm.
harder, like when Twitter bought at sorry, when
Mhm.
Elon Musk bought Twitter and renamed it X,
Mhm.
like there was a lot broken with the blue check mark system, but you
Yeah.
basically knew that like that was a person who was with a vetted organization and not someone who just had an account and
Mhm.
got a bunch of bots to get a bunch of like people following them, and they claim to be a news channel but it's actually like pay for play, and whoever's like paying for the news story to be put out there, combined with whatever
Mhm.
audience capture tends to happen on those kind of websites, is now what poses as news when other outlets are getting pushed down in the
Mhm.
algorithm. Other outlets that are more reliable technically. So it's all messed up. But I will say,
Oh.
like, you can kind of want a more informed populace and a voter too, but there has to be something said about how thoroughly, just in the Elon Musk example, but you could look at how Google and other social media companies have suppressed
Mm.
how much Canadian news makes it even outside of Canada because they don't want to pay certain fees.
Mhm.
You see how tech and money and powered interests have been able to make it that much more difficult for a well-meaning voter in any place, especially the more local you go with the less coverage there is. It's just that much harder to get the good
Mhm.
information. So I am cognizant about that
Mhm.
because yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely is like a, you can complain about people not being policy focused enough, and I'm not saying you're wrong in that as well. I'm just like trying to figure out, okay, well, like
Yeah.
what are the whole systemic like factors going into that as well, because yeah, it's not just that people
Mhm.
are dumb, but
Mhm.
kind of.
Well, like I do understand to some extent, like how do you fact check these days? How do you know which organization is legit? And then in Canada, we have the same problem with a lot of our media as you do down in the States, where it's a lot of rich people buying out all the outlets. And there was a graph I saw recently where you can see the bias of all the news organizations depending on who's bought them out recently. And so, like, where do you really go these days for unbiased news coverage? Like, there's no such thing. But then you have, like, Pierre Poilievre constantly saying, like, the CBC is bought and paid for by the Liberal government. The CBC is government funded, but that's government regardless of which, party is at the head of the government at the time. Um, and they're just establishment. Like, that's all it is. Uh, like, how do you know what is true these days? Especially with like AI coming into the fold and stuff, or you see like other actual news organizations out there fall for a Twitter account saying, "Oh, look at this news thing," and suddenly you have Fox News, a supposedly like actual news outlet reporting on it or something. It's it's like a nightmare material trying to figure all of this out.
One thing we were kind of alluding to when we were talking about polling is just how difficult it is to kind of suss out how it's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how the different calculations are really impacting the polls, and if they're over calculating, like overcompensating or undercompensating. The other layer around that is that these media companies that are increasingly more desperate, increasingly trying to chase capital and money and profits that are just simply not there and simply
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't need to be there to justify the enterprise. Um, they're getting more clickbaity. They're getting
Mm-hmm.
more, oh well,
It's profit
you can't
motivated.
yeah, you can't help but think there's
Mm-hmm.
also the incentive to make it seem like it's as close of a race as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Not like they're like fixing the numbers, but if those are what the numbers tend to be, they're going to highlight that it's a close race
Mm-hmm.
because that's going to get people to continue watching these shows.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Well, it's
I
just
think that's just like an important factor.
it's so frustrating because we have like real news stories. There's all the corruption in the Conservative Party, especially with what's happened with India recently, and the connections that they potentially have with the Conservative Party. But you don't see that in the news nearly as much as there's a revolt in the Liberal caucus. All these Liberal politicians want Justin Trudeau out, and it's like I don't think that's as big as a story as the media wants it to be. It's probably just a couple people within the Liberal caucus that are saying, yeah, it's time for him to go. I think it's time for him to go, but it's not like he would give a shit what I say. So, but in the news, that's all you see is like, oh, the Liberal caucus wants Liberal Justin Trudeau to step down. And meanwhile, they're saying nothing about the fact that Pierre Poilievre doesn't have a security clearance. And why won't he get it?
Right.
Because I watched somewhere that if he becomes prime minister, he automatically gets security clearance because you kind of need it for the job. But it's like, I don't think anyone should get security clearance unless they actually pass the vetting for it. Just flat out, you need to pass the vetting for it. And if you can't pass the vetting for it, then that means you don't get to be prime minister.
I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You just had a story that came out stateside that Donald Trump was leaking secrets about American nuclear submarines and their capabilities to his billionaire friends just to flex that he knew about them after he was already out of office. So just like multiple layers of illegal. And by the way, these are like foreign billionaires, like they're not American, and these billionaires were blabbing on themselves, and so it's a mess on top of a mess.
Yeah. It'd be nice if we actually lived in a democracy.
It'd be nice if democracies were actually desired by the parties that claim to represent them, like that put democracy or Democrat in their name.
Yeah, it's so frustrating that, and it's always, you know, the right wing, they get away with having like the worst people run as candidates and stuff. And all I can think back, like when I think back to my own life and my childhood and stuff, how, you know, there was always that kid in class that was acting up and acting up and acting up. And I remember calling out a teacher once about this. But then, you know, the one day that the kid decides to act good, he gets rewarded and praised, and he gets like this special thing at the end of the day because he did such a good job of behaving himself that day. And meanwhile, the good kids that always behave themselves never get acknowledged, never get the praise. And you can kind of see it's like the people who are good never actually get recognized for continuously being good. But as soon as like that one person who was always horrible says one thing that isn't horrible, it's like, oh, they've changed. They're the perfect person now or something. And it's like, no. But then it's also then so expected behavior from the right wing that they're these horrible people that nobody's surprised anymore. But when I was a child, if I'd said something a little offensive or off color, suddenly everyone was like, how dare you? And they would blow up because it was just unexpected coming from me.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a dynamic of that that can happen with kids kind of being put in a different level based on what their standards of academic success are. And I think that it kind of like comes to, or, you know, behavioral success are. I think that even kind of comes to the whole politics thing of like how we expect people to approach it or get there. And yeah, you'll applaud certain people for getting the bare minimum just because it's so hard for them to get the bare minimum. Meanwhile, people who ingratiate themselves in this stuff and really care about it sometimes are the ones who get the most scrutiny and the most like undue flack for it. And so, you know, it's the name of the game, I guess. You definitely don't get into it because you want the recognition for being correct, because that's definitely not guaranteed.
Death of Philippi Augusta says, quick, Sandy, what's the most offensive thing you can come up with? Cats are better than dogs.
That's not offensive at all. Also, I may have to like call it quits in about like 10 minutes or so.
Ketchup belongs on mac and cheese. Yeah. There we go. Oh, no, I know. I like Hawaiian pizza with pineapple.
Ranch dressing on pizza, I think, is kind of like a odd choice. That's the best I got.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I'm seeing like 16% reporting.
Let me check.
Not looking great. but again, there's a lot of more populated areas
Mhm.
that the NDP can make some ground on.
I'm hoping so. But yeah, I know you have a limited time here. I'll stay on a bit longer. Um,
Yeah, sorry. Wish I could stay on longer, but it's a packed week before the election
yeah,
cycle,
no,
so I've got to
I think your
get off
schedule
track.
is a bit nuts for the next little while.
Yeah,
Well,
can't wait till.
why don't I switch over to screen for just a moment? We'll go back to here. Whoops. Ah, I did that in the wrong order. There we go. Do this first, do this, then do this. There we go. So, Dan, where can people find you and what's coming up this next week that people might want to watch you?
Yes, youtube.com/Dan from the internet is mainly where I'm doing things now. Twitch.tv/Dan from the web. And on Thursdays, I usually stream Power Report, a panel show with different folks on the left. Sandy, you've been on a couple of times.
Mhm.
I need to figure out so much stuff planning for next week, but it's going to be a fun one. We're going to be streaming all day, and it's going to be a co-stream with leftist mafia as well. So you're going to see a little bit of Lance. You're going to see a little bit of Matt Bender, who's going to be apparently double dipping our stream and the Majority Report thing. So this is it's going to be fun for the whole family. Everyone's going to be around. We're all going to be reacting to it together. Just find us on Rational Nationals stream, or David Doyle's, or Lance's, or mine. Like, thankfully, StreamYard lets you go to all the places at once,
Mhm.
so you'll be able to find us,
Yeah.
and you'll be able to have a fun time.
Yeah,
But
to
I
celebrate or
not
commiserate.
pretty much, yeah. I remember in 2016, I definitely knew more concretely that Hillary Clinton was going to lose. In 2020, I felt a little bit, not as strongly, but I felt that Joe Biden was going to win, because Donald
Mhm.
Trump, it was just like omni shambles. It was really terrible. But yeah, right now it's really close. And I'm not just saying that because of polling. I'm just saying that because of any of the other signs I would usually use beyond polling, or, to add to polling to help me get a sense of it. I'm just not able to get those reads anymore. Again, a lot of it because of social media being as destroyed and shitified as it really is. And so I think it's going to be interesting. I think, um, much like the Saskatchewan elections, it might be a little bit slow coming in. Not just because of California, but
You're
I think
not
it's just
gonna.
going to take a while.
That's the thing. I think a lot of people are going to be frustrated. It's not going to be known on election night who wins. It's going to take a while before, and that time in between when the counting of the ballots starts to when it's over, that time is just going to be pure chaos and hell and people accusing people of things and stuff. It's not going to be a good time to look forward to, but it wouldn't surprise me if it takes 3 weeks.
I mean, it's definitely going to take 3 weeks for places like
Mhm.
California, and for races that have to be, a little bit more down ballot, like some judges that aren't getting as much attention as the executive branch, the presidency, or, any senators that might be up for office or anything like that. That's totally possible. Um, I think within a couple of days,
You should
because
know who wins the Electoral College.
yes, I feel pretty good about that. Because I mean, barring some, court tomfoolery that might extend that out a little while longer, a couple like weeks or months, then we're just like in a totally out of their separate territory. But if we have a good, clean, non-corrupt secretaries of state running their respective elections, then I don't think we'll know on Tuesday, but I think we'll have a directional sense by like the middle of Wednesday. And I don't think we'll be entering the weekend not knowing who's going to win,
Mm-hmm.
before any tomfoolery. And then I think that at least as for the executive branch, I think you can see some congressional races, some Senate races, definitely some propositions and some ballot measures that take that full 3 week time, sweet ass time that might need to be there. But no,
Mm-hmm.
we'll know by Friday. That was definitely how it was with 2020. There's more mail-in voting that's being embraced by Democrats and the Republicans, unlike Saskatchewan, which literally does not have. And I looked this up. I'm not just trashing them. They don't do any sort of electronically assisted voting. They don't have scantrons, nothing. It's all done by hand, so that's why it's a little bit slower. America has voting machines, and we do have scantrons, and so it is a lot faster. And we, again, every state does it differently, but a lot of states will count their ballots early and then just release them at 1 minute after whenever the polls close. So we get a really good directional sense. Even in states like California, you get a really good directional sense every hour at the top of the hour, kind of rolling throughout the evening until like Guam finishes voting.
I wish I could be with a group of people for this. Like, I don't want to be home alone. Like, I wish I could be like talking with people or something. Like, I remember the first time Trump got elected, and first time, not that's going to be second. I was actually, there was a independent theater here that was broadcasting it live, and I went with somebody because we were so sure Hillary was going to win, and we left very disappointed.
Yeah, that was a horrible night. Not gonna
Mhm.
read
Mhm.
but it was a horrible night. But yeah, check that out. We'll have coverage, whatever happens, to kind of, assess that, and then we will be making predictions of the upcoming administration based on based on like what information we kind of have a clear sense of then. But yeah, it's really, it's an honor to be able to talk to such um incredibly smart people on the left right now, and to be able to unite with them on certain days and moments like this. Talking about with you, Sandy, on this election coverage. I'm talking about with the general election coverage next week, and all the conversations before that and after that, and with the audiences that are really engaged and just as, if not more smart, and always very clever as well. So it's tough and difficult work, but it ain't much, but it's honest work, and it's more enjoyable than not if you look at it in the non-stressful tension cliffhangery ways. So
Yeah.
trying to be positive about it like that.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Just most Saskatchewan enjoying I've done in my entire life. So
Yeah,
thank you
you're probably like the American that I know that knows the most about Saskatchewan, only because I sent you a video about it. So you're the most qualified American I know to cover Saskatchewan with me.
And Sandy doesn't even know if I finished the video or not. So I did. It was a very good video. I think I watched another one from that
Yeah,
channel
I
too.
sent
So,
him the video that Steve Boots did, and Steve Boots is from
yes.
Saskatchewan, so he's covering this on Twitch right now. And he does amazing content when it comes to Canadian issues and stuff. So people can go check out Steve Boots. But since you're in the YouTube chat, you stay here. You stay here. You can go to Twitch later on to see Steve Boots.
Of course, yes. I will be going to continue doing some work and getting some food. But
Okay.
thank you all for having me, and shout out to the Sandbox, and I will see you all when I see you all.
Okay.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. This looks weird right now. I have to switch screens just a second, and I will be back. And I am back. Okay. Had to do some screen switching around there, but it's great to have Dan on the show again. He's been on the show quite a few times, and I've been on his. Death of Philippi Augusta. I assumed that Steve Boots was a cat. No. He's from Saskatchewan, was a teacher, and does really great videos breaking down information about Canada and stuff. Just checking the Sandbox now. Lots of people talking about pizza, making me hungry. I had pizza for dinner. Almost made me sick. It's something that I have to be very careful about when I get slices of pizza. When you walk into a place and you just get a slice of pizza. because I'm allergic to bell peppers, so red peppers, green peppers. And sometimes when they make those pizzas for the slices, they will make like the Hawaiian right beside a vegetarian with that on it. And if there's any peppers that transferred oils over onto it, then it can make me sick. And I tasted a hint of pepper today, but not enough to make me sick. And then I had to cut out, there was a yellow pepper at the edge of it. So I had to cut out a huge chunk of the pizza to make sure, because it's not just the pepper, it's the oil on the pepper. So I can't just pull the peppers off the pizza because the oil is there and it can make me sick. So I have to be careful when I get pizza like that, I usually try to look for slices that aren't near pepper slices. But I'll just check the sandbox. Well, while we're doing this. Teddy Cool. Thanks, Looney Tune, for sharing the link to my artwork. Yep. I do a lot of drawings. I did a nice drawing of Dan. It's not up on the website yet, though, because I still haven't gotten around to getting it scanned and stuff. Let's see. Shemagli, but NDP's overall vote total seems to be ticking up as the count comes in. Yeah, let's see what this one says. So 305 polls have now reported. I don't know. That's still looking pretty bad to me. Like, I hate getting that false sense of hope. Like, oh, the polls rolled them neck and neck, and now you're seeing this, and it's like, that's not neck and neck right there. Like, elected. The Saskatchewan Party has 14 elected already. The NDP doesn't have a single seat elected yet. And again, I know it's this and that and the other thing, but I think part of the reason why I don't like polls too is I hate a false sense of hope. I just want to deal with it as I see it type thing. And before I did live streams and stuff like that, quite often I wouldn't pay attention to elections at all until the next day because I didn't want to go through this little horse race of ooh, they're in the lead now, they're in the lead, and they're in this and this. I didn't want to go through the anxiety of that, so I would just wake up the next morning and deal with it, whatever was in. But oh, now the NDP has a seat. Let's see. Yeah, back when I was cut out all factory farmed and processed meat from my diet. Looking at the pizza comments again, the pizza I would get would be spinach pineapple pizza. Though some places would let me put like edamame on it if they had that. John Martinez, I hated cats until I met my cat Luna. Sometimes you just need to meet the right one. I've always been a cat person. Always, 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 since I was a child. And I can't imagine my life ever without cats. Like, there will never be a point in my life where I'm living without cats. My life is not complete without a cat in my house. Shade Dragon says mac and cheese needs hot sauce. No, I can't do that. Anything above ground pepper is too spicy for me. And John Martinez saying, they are extremely different from dogs and very intelligent. Love my little Luna. Cats have quite the personalities because they always say cats are this and that and the other thing. The thing with cats is you need to earn their loyalty. They don't just give it to you. Like, they have their own personalities, and you have to find a cat that your personalities actually get along. They won't just change themselves for you. Let's see. Lady Badash agrees with me. Pineapple belongs on pizza. It's very yummy on pizza. John Martinez, I know this isn't popular, but anchovies on pizza is very tasty. I don't know if I've actually ever done that. Shemagli, White City, and Capella are two separate communities. I don't know why they are in the same riding exactly. It's probably a population thing. The ridings are based on population, not boundaries of cities or anything of that sort. So it could just be that neither one of them were big enough to be in one riding. Atticus Among Us. See, Sandy likes pineapple. It's actually my favorite fruit. And if you have a chocolate fountain and you have fresh cut pineapple, that is so good. Like, people would never really normally think, pineapple and chocolate is good. But if it's like the fresh flowy chocolate on fresh pineapple, what it does is it takes away a bit of that acidic sting. And it's so yummy. I've also done cheesecake where I've added like pineapple juice into the mix of the cheesecake and then put crushed pineapple on top of it. So it's a pineapple cheesecake. Oh, that is so yummy. But in the morning, one of my main breakfasts is yogurt, and I put pineapple on top of my yogurt as well. So I eat a fair bit of pineapple. And I love just getting a fresh pineapple every now and then from the store and chopping it up and eating it a la carte. Stephen K, I think it will be known on election night. All the early voting is going to decide a lot of these states, talking about the American election. Yeah, I catastrophize a lot, more so than you guys, than I do in front of you guys. I'm just really worried about what's going to happen down there for the election. Like, as much as I wish I could have gone to the live show for the majority report, I'm like, I don't know if I feel safe on that side of the border come that time, like during the elections and all that sort of stuff. Shemagli, the proper way to do mushrooms is super thinly sliced and well done on top. See, I have a thing against mushrooms and that I'm just against mushrooms. Like, it's the fact that it's a fungus and I don't like eating it. I have nothing against the taste of them. It's kind of like me and onions. I can't handle eating onions, but I like the flavor of onions. I don't necessarily like the flavor of mushrooms, but I'm not against it. I just don't like eating the physical mushroom. Everyone's talking about pizza again, and it makes me want to eat pizza again. I just had the slices. Let's see. Oops. It jumped. Jacqueline Leach, I don't think I've seen you in the sandbox before, so sorry for mispronouncing your name. Nice to see you. So glad to have heard about this channel on MR today. It's good to know a leftist Saskatchewan YouTube channel. Well, I'm in Ontario. If you're looking for Saskatchewan specifically, you want to check out Steve Boots on Twitch and on YouTube and TikTok. He's from Saskatchewan and does a great job covering that and other Canadian politics. I'm a little Ontario-centric. I cover a lot of stuff with Doug Ford, but I try to do a broad range across the country as well when it comes to politics from a leftist perspective of somebody like me who lives with disabilities, poverty, and part of the LGBTQ plus community. I'm queer and non-binary. And I try to add a sarcastic flair to my critique as well. So super progressive channel here. And I also try to, when I talk about global news, like what's happening over in Gaza and stuff like that, I try to talk about it from, Canada's participation in it and comments that our politicians are making, how Canada is funding it and all that sort of stuff. But then I also talk about queer issues, social issues, all that sort of stuff. Sarah Leela, allergies are wicked. Yep. I got sick at a wedding because of a veggie tray. I ate the carrots, but the carrots had been touching the peppers and too much of the oil had absorbed into the carrot and it made me so sick. And I knew I was in trouble because I could taste the pepper on the carrot. And if it's strong enough that I can really taste it, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to get sick. And yeah, I halfway through, I wasn't able to eat any of the main meal because my stomach was so not agreeing with me. And it's one of the things, like, it just takes time. It just takes time and it needs to come out. But then once it does, I'm fine. Like, there's no other side effects from the allergy. I just need to get it out of my system. Once it's out of my system, I can eat again, all that sort of stuff. So at least I was able to have dessert at the wedding. Atticus Among Us. Plain cheese is always good. It is a pizza that I would actually request when I was in a workplace and they would do like pizza celebration lunches and stuff, because most vegetarian pizzas, just generic ones, I can't eat because of the peppers and stuff on it. And cheese pizza is a vegetarian pizza. You know, not vegan, but it is vegetarian. Looks like people didn't like the idea of a pineapple and a chocolate fountain. Or are they talking about the edamame on a pizza? Stephen K. Edamame on pizza. Did I hear that correctly? That's like I had an almond pizza. Yeah, I used to put some edamame on the pizza. Added a little bit of a crunch to it. It's nice. Black beans on pizza, also good. Let's see. People still talking about pizza because I started talking about pizza again. Let's see where CBC is on this.
Established footholds that the Sask Party made in Regina and Saskatoon, though, is a critical issue. If they start losing those as the results start pouring in, hopefully soon, because we're an hour and 41 minutes into that, we still don't really have many city results, then we might see something very different.
Do you want me
Yeah, so he's saying right here that there hasn't been many city results yet, and that's where we're going to see the uptick, I think, in NDP votes coming in, is when the cities start reporting in. But yeah, it seems really late that we're already like an hour and a half into this, and you know, how many polls so far? Not even half, like not even close to half polls yet. But it's not looking good. But that's the thing again, too, with the way these election goes. As soon as they start getting in certain areas, all of a sudden you see it swing another way. It's, again, this is like, I get really anxious during this part of an election. And like part of me feels like, why should I be that invested? It's Saskatchewan. I don't live in Saskatchewan because, you know, part of being on the left usually means you suffer from the ailment of empathy. And I have a lot of empathy. And I know people suffer under conservative governments across the country. Whenever there's a provincial government that's conservative, federal government that's conservative, far more people suffer because of housing crisis. I mentioned it earlier, the amount of social murder Doug Ford policies are responsible for is ridiculous. Just so much. It is disturbing. And, you know, especially with the way the conservative governments are becoming more anti-LGBTQ plus in their policies and stuff, is very scary. And also when it comes to people dealing with addictions, part of my issue with the BC NDP was not too long before the election, they said that, oh, we're going to start, you know, forcing people into treatment for addictions, brain injuries, and severe mental illness, which is just bad on so many levels. I have lots of videos covering that. You can check out my videos on my channel to see more about that, but it's just horrendous. And when you have a bunch of conservative governments, they look at what one conservative government did and said they do the yes and. So one conservative government says, we're going out trans kids to parents that they don't feel comfortable coming out to. And then the next province will say, yes, we'll do that. And we'll make it so they can't use their proper change rooms. And then another one will come in and say, yes, and we're going to make it for adults as well. And then another one, yes, and we're going to make it so they can't get treatment to a certain age. And then this and that and the other thing. And now in Alberta, they're threatening to make it so that you can't change official government ID. And just always they're yes anding to make the place worse and more inhospitable and things of that sort. Whereas you never see that on the progressive side. You never see, a province saying, okay, we have everyone with a family doctor, yay. And then the next province say, yes, we'll get everyone a family doctor and mental health care, yay. And then their one say, well, we'll do all of that and full medical coverage for medicines and stuff. Like, you never see it that way that would actually benefit people. Like, oh, we're going to make sure everyone has a home. Oh, and here's my kitty. Here's my Lanier. This is Lanier. For those of you who are sci-fi geeks, you will know Lanier. You will know where Lanier got his name. Bonus points for anyone who puts it into the chat where Lanier got his name from. I can't give you anything other than just, mental bonus points. He's my first orange kitty, and he's a sweetie. He's a sweetie. He's a brat, though. Oh my God. When it comes we're getting close to dinner time and wet food, this cat turns into a little demon. He goes super crazy for wet food, and he'll become aggressive towards me, grabbing me and stuff, where's my wet food? But I have to give them wet food to distract them because I have to keep Frodo, my old cat, the senior who's 17, who's on daily medication for his kidney issues. I keep him separated overnight in my bedroom so that he has time to eat his food because he grazes, whereas this little pig would eat all of it right away. So I have to give him a little to distract him so that he doesn't try to bang the door down. Big cat, orange kitties have huge personalities. They do. They do. He's my first orange kitty. But if you know where Lanier, where that name came from, you're my kind of geek. Let's check in and see what they're saying.
So it's kind of fabulous to be out here with this energy, with all the people watching the results come in. Yeah, it's incredible.
Now, the early results for your riding show you giving the commanding lead. Can I get your response to that right now?
Yeah, obviously it's what I've worked really hard for over the past 28 days, but not taking it for granted, right? It's early days for me, certainly in South Albert, and for constituencies across the province. But yeah, it's obviously the way you want the numbers to look.
Now, you're obviously running in a fairly new riding, obviously created through this process. How does that change your attempt to campaign?
Jeffrey Allen, thank you so much for the $13.99 super chat. Thanks for the Saskatchewan coverage, Sandy. Appreciate it. Well, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. But yeah, I don't want to cover just Ontario news. So November 26th will be the next Canadian election with Nova Scotia. I'll be covering that most likely with Mark Joycey, who joined me for the New Brunswick election. So life, but pineapple ice cream and steak is delicious, but you don't mix them. I've had pineapple rings on hamburgers before. That is really good. And you get that with a zingy, zangy barbecue sauce. Super yummy.
Obviously our healthcare and education. And number two, the thing that was the most interesting to me was the number of swing voters that we had this election. Sometimes you knock on doors and somebody says, oh, I'm undecided. And so I've always said, well, have you ever voted NDP before? And then, people say, oh, God, yeah, I voted for Lauren, I voted for Roy, I voted for you guys last time. Or they'll say, no, sorry. And you say, oh, yeah, it's okay. I know, sadly, not 100% of people vote for me. But the number of
His
people
little
this
tongue is
election
sticking
that I
out right now.
who would say, I haven't voted NDP before, but I'm going to change my vote this time. no word of a lie, really, really surprising how many there were. Obviously very encouraging for us, but as I said, early days yet.
Elena, thank you very much. Thank you. That was Elena Young, NDP MLA, also NDP candidate for Regina South Albert. Sam, I'll throw it back to you.
All right, thanks, Alex. Let's go to Eric Grenier, our polls analyst for the evening. Eric.
Here, let me just switch over quickly. There we go. There we go. Is his little tongue still sticking out? No, his little tongue isn't out. But he has his cute little goatee there. You can see he has a little white goatee. Okay. Let's do this again. Ah, you're seeing the sausage. There we go. Nope. Gotta do this and this. For those of you who don't know, Lanier gets his name from a character on Babylon 5. John Martinez, there's a place out here called The Still. They serve alcoholic ice cream. I can see that.
Difference for the NDP. That could flip. That could put the Sask party up to 31. You keep going down the list. There's a lot of very, very, very close ridings. We're still so early in the count in the cities. We can even look at the next set of ridings. Cumberland is another one that if the Sask party won, that would be a bit of a surprise.
So we're up to 12 seats for the NDP and 30 for the Saskatchewan party.
If some of them flip over to the NDP, that changes that calculation pretty significantly. And then again, we are waiting on 16 of those 19 ridings that have yet to report a single vote. A lot of them are in Regina and Saskatoon.
Is that a typo I see, John Martinez? Your car is cute. Your cat. Shade Dragon, in the US, if you're undecided, you either dipshit or you want to vote for Trump, but you just can't bring yourself, and hoping he does something inside 7 days that justifies it. Seeing everything he has said and done, like the chat he had with Joe Rogan, the rallies he has, if anyone can look at him and objectively think he is competent, like full mind ability at this point to run a country, I can't help you. Like, just, you're too lost in the cult at that point to objectively look at him and be like, no, he can definitely do this. Jacqueline Leach, I don't know if I'm saying your name right. I'm horrible with names. Thank you so much for the 279 Canadian. Very glad to find your Canadian Left channel. Oh, thank you for finding me. I do live streams and videos. I used to do only video essays, but I got into live streams and I quite enjoy them because I like having interactions with people and having a conversation. And like I said, this Halloween, I have a special show coming up. And like the thing is I want to say it's not political heavy, but I always end up talking about politics because politics influences so much of your life. Like the book I wrote that I'm keep on teasing you guys with, it's actually very political in it, but it's not a political book. But there's a lot of a political element into it. Like, yeah, it's hard to explain, but I will explain it on my Halloween live stream. And that's the one where I keep on saying to Looney Tunes 9000, that might be my first 5-hour live stream. But since Leftist Mafia won't be streaming and Power Report won't be streaming on Thursday, it opens up the evening for just me. Let's see. Shemagli, I don't think you can buy fry in ice cream, but you can fry frozen battered ice cream and pieces of steak and serve them both with pineapple barbecue sauce reduction. That's getting to be a bit much, I think. Jacqueline, Leach is correct for Leach. Okay. Leach is Scottish Gaelic. Ooh, That's like my favorite accent is a Scottish accent. That's a nice accent to me.
Influx in votes for NDP, considering that we really need a little bit more of a communal perspective for our politics here. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
see.
definitely been a slow burn throughout the night.
Yeah.
Can say
One.
that. Yeah.
And you guys mentioning that you're kind of swaying more toward the NDP. What is it about that
Still
party
only
that
one
kind of
officially
has
seat
captured
called
your
for the
attention,
NDP.
and especially going into this election?
I think that
Oh, so
for the
this
NDP,
screen,
they have a little bit more
this is
of
just
a
what's leading. Okay.
representation of what it takes for the community to come together.
The
I
30 and the
understand
12
that
is just what's
Saskatchewan
leading.
party or the Sask
Yeah. So they're showing 30 and 12, but according to, that's just, if you include the leading with the actual elected seats, that you get the 30 and the 12. So far elected are 21 and 1, with the Saskatchewan party leading with 9 and the NDP leading with 11. Still not looking good. Still not looking good. But yeah, there's a nice big chunk of orange. Like again, look at the riding boundaries are as flat as the province. Like the province is just so square. But this is the thing that always gets me when you see like electoral. What's with this area here though? Okay, that is interesting. There's like a little tag of orange right up at the top of that riding. Oh, there we go. What's with this right here? Huh. That's interesting. Ah. I'm playing with this map here. There we go. But I saw the maps for BC, and you see just like all this blue all over the place. But then when you shrink it down to just, you know, the different ridings and stuff, you can really see the different mix of the orange and blue they had. And again, for any Americans watching here, blue is bad in Canada because blue is conservative. Red is liberal. It's reversed, which really messes up my dyslexia when I start talking back and forth between American and Canadian politics. But I tend to focus more on Canadians, so. Shemegli, that's called gerrymandering. We don't really do gerrymandering here in Canada. Our borders, as you saw from that map there, they're pretty square, and they're meant to go along like natural formations, city lines, roads, things of that sort. Like in the States, you can get ridings that look like a horseshoe or just like a Rorschach test or something like that. Like those are the type of ridings you get in the States. You don't get that in Canada. Here, they're a lot more cube-esque, like cube-looking type thing. Jacqueline saying, well, with a Scottish accent, it's La H. I can't do that. And everyone keeps on talking about food again. And it's like, I had pizza not too long before this. Well, I guess it was a few hours before this. And, you know, it is almost midnight where I... But I'm a night owl. I'm normally up till 1 or 2. But the thing is that I don't think I'll be able to stay up late enough until all the results are in, unfortunately, because I still need to, like, after being online and stuff, I need to decompress. You know, I need to unwind, play some games or something to just relax a little bit before I can actually get to bed. So I'll probably give it another half hour at least, and hopefully we get a little bit more concrete results. But It's disappointing to start an election stream and not stick with it long enough to know what the actual results are. Like, that's why the one for New Brunswick was so satisfying. Within an hour, we knew who had won that election. But this was the same thing that happened with the BC election. Was the night of, a lot of people had to tap out of the stream that the Serfs was doing because the results just weren't in. And for people in the Sandbox who don't know, the Serfs are another Canadian content creator, Lance, and they're located in BC. So we have BC covered. In Alberta, if you're on Twitter, you can look for the Breakdown Alberta, so the Breakdown AB. And I don't know where they stream their content, but they do make actual content. And they cover Albertan politics from a progressive perspective. In Saskatchewan, you have Steve Boots. I don't know of any in Manitoba. And then there's me here in Ontario. Also, David Dole in the Rational National is Ontario-based. And I don't know about any in Quebec or the Atlantic provinces, the Maritimes. Everyone keeps on talking about food in the Sandbox. Ah! Jar, these numbers are so cute. Less than 1,000 to get elected. Well, that's the thing. Like, with municipal elections in particular, you can get elected into office with 500 votes. Like, if you get 500 people out to vote for you in a lot of ridings, you win. It's that bad. It's just population density and stuff, because like we were saying earlier with Dan, like California has the same population as Canada. The population density here is just so small. I'm having my nighttime craving for peanut butter. Peanut butter is like my autistic everyday food. Like, I need to have it every day. Even though I'm have like a peanut butter bagel tomorrow for breakfast. But, you know, sometimes at night before I go to bed, I just need to scoop peanut butter like right out of the jar. I go through so much peanut butter. But it's my autistic everyday food that I need to eat. Let's see. Soul Life. Who brought up the pineapple pizza? I'll ban them. Yes, Sarah Leela. It was me, Soul Life. It was me. Maybe I'll ban you for wanting to ban me for pineapple pizza. I think I started the pineapple on pizza when somebody asked me to say something offensive.
Difficult for small businesses. One of the biggest things that we looked at is even with greater targets being set by governments and private industry.
Let's see. So, the Skeptical Leftists, I have a channel in Saskatchewan, but don't focus that much on Saskatchewan stuff. If you want to know more, there's some great Saskatchewan podcasts like Unmaking Saskatchewan and the Saskatchewan Survivor Guide. Good to know. And let's see. Atticus Among Us, food porn cannot be denied. I'm really thinking about needing that peanut butter soon. Jacqueline SP has their majority, so racism and fundamentalist Christian a-holes will continue their weird obsession with alternative reality in Saskatchewan. Yeah. It hasn't been called yet, but it's not looking good. But not even half the polls are in, and if the rest of the polls are more from city areas, we could see a drastic turnaround in those numbers. One hopes. John Martinez saying he just scooped the last bit of peanut butter jar a few minutes ago. Yeah, I will take like a spatula and scrape the edges of it to make sure I get like every last bit of peanut butter from a jar before I toss it. Durek Weinberger? I am butchering these names, I know. Welcome to the sandbox. I smoke cigarettes every day. Neurotypicals wouldn't understand, lol. I have a caffeine addiction. It helps keep me calm. I can drink caffeine. Like, this was a coffee chocolate mix that I was drinking right before I go to bed and still feel fine. And it's a soothing, yeah, it's stimming. Diet Coke is stimming. You know, the burn, sometimes I just need to feel the burn of the acid down my throat. Okay, half the polls are reporting, and I still don't like these numbers. Oh, we might get a good idea. It's just, I hate when bad governments get rewarded because people are low information, or they're not voting based on policy, they're voting based on emotion. You know, all the conservatives that love to say facts over feelings, and yet that's all they vote on is their emotions. And just, oh, the culture war, and, you know, oh, let's target trans children and put all of the blame on them, focus on them for some reason, which is just ridiculous. Or it's the immigrants, and instead of actually focusing on the policies that impact their lives the most, you know, focusing on the policies that they get denied because of the conservative governments, and they just want to blame the liberals. Oh, look at the liberals. Look at what they did to housing. Well, that's provincial. That's provincial. Look at how they've dismantled our health care. That's provincial. All the people who can't get a family doctor, you blame your provincial government for that. It is just so upsetting that people, like with the British Columbia election, there was somebody going around with a video, and some people were saying in that election that they got out, and it's like, yeah, I was just looking forward to voting against Justin Trudeau. Like, they didn't understand it was provincial election. Like, you're not voting against Justin Trudeau for that. You know, but some people really don't understand. You know, they just get caught up with whatever controversy, whatever clickbait is there. But a lot of people don't understand how our electoral system in Canada actually works. And it is complicated. First past the post, you know, you win on a plurality, not on a majority. But most people don't realize you're not voting in Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister. You're voting in the Liberal Party. He happens to be the head of the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party can change. They could change right now who is Prime Minister. Like, literally, they could just change who is Prime Minister if they had Justin Trudeau step down from that position and appointed somebody else to be head of the Liberal Party. So you're voting for a party, not a person. And a lot of people don't seem to get that. They're like, well, I really like the personality of this one politician, so I'm going to vote for him, even though that person is conservative and all their policies goes against, you know, your own interests. But it's like, oh, he just spoke so well while he was up on the podium or something. And they don't understand the way party politics works. Once you get into office, you have to vote with party lines. It's not like in the States where you have Democrats and Republicans and they vote with one side or the other. Or look how often these Democrats voted with Republicans, and look how often these Republicans voted with Democrats. You don't get that in Canadian political systems. If you're Liberal, you vote with whatever the Liberals tell you to vote. If you're NDP, you vote with whatever the NDP tells you to vote. If you do anything different, even once, you get risk getting kicked out of caucus, being no longer part of that party. They're very, very strict with that, which makes it very hard to be independent in Canadian, like have independent thought in Canadian politics. Like a prime example of that is Sarah Jama in Ontario. She was elected into Ontario as an NDP MPP, but they kicked her out of caucus shortly after October 7th of last year, because she made a statement calling for a ceasefire and basically referring to Palestinians as people. And the Ontario NDP kicked her out of caucus because of that, because she spoke out of turn that quick. And they still haven't apologized to her for it, even though they later basically took her stance. Frodo walked in here. He doesn't come up to me much anymore when I'm live streaming. Otherwise, I'd pull him onto my lap. He's the senior. He's the 17-year-old. And I like showing him off because a lot of people, they know about his health conditions and stuff. And I want to keep people updated. Abernathy, get out of that. Abernathy is my third cat. So the two cats, Lanier and Abernathy, they're just over a year old. Be about a year and a half. They're 2 months apart. I got them because Frodo wanted siblings. And when you get them that young, it's best to get 2 at a time for social reasons. Hey, stop that. So when people ask me how many cats I have, it's like 3, but when Frodo passes away, I'm not looking to get a third. But he's going to live till he's 30. That's what I keep on saying. Frodo's going to live till he's 30. Jacqueline, Saskatchewan's real issue is racism, and this is the mask. They've been dropping the mask. Like I showed earlier in the live stream, the racist comments of one of the, I think they got elected in, people from the Conservative Party in BC, and just horrendous racist comments she was making. And that's not an outlier in that party. Like all of the conservative governments across the board, if you look at them, there are people saying some of the worst, racist, vile things possible. And it's not restricted to conservatives. You see it in the Liberal Party and you see it in the NDPs. It's not like racism is restricted to one party. It's just more common in one party than the other. And that's another thing that they seem to be really picking up on, especially now in Canada with the federal Liberal Party also making a bigger deal out of immigrants. That is very racially undertoned when they do that, because it's certain types of immigrants that they have issues with. It's not all immigrants, it's certain types of immigrants that they seem to have issues with. Shade Dragon, if we're still talking weird population facts, the largest population of Vietnamese people outside of Vietnam is Westminster, California, as of a few years ago. Might have changed by now. I think this area has the largest Rohingya Muslim population outside of, I don't know. I get mixed up if it's Burma or Myanmar. I think it's Burma. The name changed. And I get very dyslexic. Shay Dragon, also, if you have ADHD, caffeine is a mild stimulant, so it's calming. That's why caffeine makes me sleepy. Yep, that's part of it too, why I drink a lot of caffeine. Like in the morning, it just soothes me. In the evening, it helps calm me. If I'm stressed out, I drink caffeine because, yeah, it helps to calm me because ADHD. And it's something, that's how I learned, or I started to put the pieces together about my ADHD when I was younger. Like, it's only since I got onto social media and stuff that I clued into my autism. But years and years and years ago, I figured out the ADHD and OCD that I have. And I've known I was dyslexic since I was a child. That showed up in my marks and stuff and was an issue in my schools. And it's usually, a bundled deal. When you're neurodivergent, it's usually a sampling of a bunch of different things. You're not usually just dyslexic. It's usually a bunch of other things as well. So I can't say I'm surprised to clue into my autism. And it makes so much sense when I go back in my life. And it's like, oh, if I knew back then what I know now. So life, I used to keep PB in my snack bank and just eat a spoonful at a time. LOL. Yes, we're all just spooning the peanut butter. Jacqueline, colonialist racism, like Zionism. There's been a lot of that, especially in the NDP. I covered Selena Robinson way back when she made her comments about the area that Palestine was just a crappy piece of land when it was given over to made into Israel. John Martinez, good morning, Sandy. Oh yeah, it is past midnight. The skeptical leftists. Some of the ads here frame voting for NDP as voting for Trudeau's choice. It probably worked to convince some people. Yeah. The joke's on them because the Liberals are more likely to back up the Conservatives than they are with the NDP. For anyone who doubts that, look at the voting records at a federal level and see who votes together more often. When it comes to taxing, like the one that always galls me the most is when COVID was first started and really people were actually taking it semi-seriously back then. And the NDP put forth a universal pharmacare. The Conservatives and Liberals voted against that. They also voted against taxing the ultra-rich, the corporations that were profiting off of the pandemic. The NDP wanted to tax them higher, and the Conservatives and Liberals voted against that. Over and over again, whenever you see any sort of progressive policy put forth, the Conservatives and Liberals vote against it. And then the Conservatives will turn around and say, oh no, it's the Liberals that are progressive and blah, blah, blah. And they'll team up with the NDP. Ah, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Atticus Among Us, food is not a luxury. According to the profits of the grocery stores, apparently it is. Jacqueline, well, it did take 4 years to kick Mulclair out of the NDP. Should we not? Mulclair, I think, actually turned liberal, like literally. Well, it looks like the NDP is gaining ground. So that's there by another seat. But they're leading in 24 now. So they're closing that gap, which is good. I'd like to see them close that gap a little bit more before I call it a night. Abernathy came back into the room. He's been on my lap a couple times. He loves sitting on my lap, but he is a chunky kitty. And I move around a lot. I have to move my legs and stuff a lot. I'm constantly, people see me shifting in my seat a lot. So having him on my lap, forcing me to stay in one position, actually gets painful, especially with the pressure of his weight on my joints. Let's see. Shay Dragon with a heart and Atticus Among Us hugs Sandy. So life. And there's lots of hugging and stuff going on. I didn't catch everything. Okay. Well, I hope everyone's okay. John Martinez, yeah, brown and black immigration. Yeah, they don't seem to have problems from people from England or Norway or France coming over. Australians, no problem. John Martinez, Trump even said shithole countries to describe him. And there's been a lot of focus on the international students, and most of the international students, a large chunk of them are from India, in Ontario in particular. And they're focusing on the international students. They're blaming the housing crisis on immigration and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, no, that's not the problem. The problem is the underfunding in housing, the not keeping up with demand, the cuts in housing that they did a long time ago, the provinces with letting rent control and stuff go away and the outrageous rent prices. It's not their fault for limited housing supply in this country. This country put policies in place decades ago, which is leading to the crisis we currently have now. Let's see. So life, they sell these circle things that's like a PBJ sandwich and snack field, they're pretty good. Thing is that I love peanut butter and chocolate, like Reese and stuff like that. The problem is, not all peanut butter and chocolate is good. I've gone to like chocolatiers and stuff, and they've had some, and it's like, this is kind of gross. You have to have the right mix of peanut butter and chocolate. And there used to be these peanut butter chocolate eggs that would come out around Easter, and they were the same size as the Cadbury eggs. But they had like a gold foil and they came in packs of 3. I obsessed over them every Easter. Loved them so much. And then they just went away because either Reese took over the peanut butter and chocolate empire of all other places, but then also it's like, oh, we gotta pull everything peanut butter or peanut off the shelves because of peanut allergies. But I used to love those peanut butter chocolate eggs. It was like the perfect blend. And then the other peanut butter chocolate thing I love that they got rid of, the Reese balls. So you know how some things you get like a Kit Kat ball or a Crunchy ball and they come in bags, and they used to have those for Reese peanut butter cups. And those were crack to me. I would just open up a bag of those and devour them. They were so good. So good. But they haven't been around in ages. But some of the other chocolate made into balls are still around, but not those ones. And me alone should have helped the sales enough to have kept them popular. Jacqueline, BC has rabid races, absolutely. The colonialism here is intense. However, the First Nations here are very strong and autonomous. It has changed over time. Over time, the power of the people in politics. John Martinez, Cadbury eggs are disgusting. I was really cruel once. I used to volunteer and be matched up with a newcomer, somebody who had immigrated to Canada. And it's like a buddy system thing where you help them just learn the ways of Canada, like how to get a bus pass, a library card, you know, just to help them adjust into the community and stuff like that. And one woman, she was over here from China, and I did the meanest thing to her around Easter, and I gave her a Cadbury egg. Be like, here, try this Canadian treat. And I know it's cruel because they don't have sweets like that over there. The expression on her face. I can't handle that sweet. I can't handle it. I have to be in the right mood for a Cadbury egg, but I do like them. Yeah, Easter is my favorite candy month. Purdy's Peanut Butter Daisies, Shemakley says. Oh, also the Reese's wafers, the wafer chocolate bars that they have. Those are really good. I love those so much. But they're terribly expensive when I do come across them, because it's like $2 for 4 pieces of them. And they're on Amazon every now and then, and I've tossed them onto my wish list every now and then, but I'd almost feel guilty for anyone buying them for me because they're terribly expensive and they shouldn't be. So Life, I would eat almond joy balls too. John Martinez, they still sell the mini Reese cups here. They have the mini Reese cups here, but they're not the same as the Reese balls. Because there was a texture thing going on with the Reese balls too that I absolutely loved. This time of night, my cats are start going crazy. They get really active this time of night, and they're going to make a mess. I was really hoping to get more concrete results before I call it a night. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nothing updated. Okay. Let's see. WJ Adam 024. Cadbury eggs made me a better cover. Don't know what that means. There might be a typo in that. Do we get a Frodo? Do we get a Frodo? Hey, Frodo. Hi. No, it's okay, Frodo. It's okay. There's a Frodo near me. Come here, Frodo. Aw. They'll not come in here. Frodo, come on. I like to show off Frodo because... Do that. No, not that one. That one. There we go. Yeah, I have ongoing vet bills with Frodo. Any help with that is greatly appreciated. The way people can help with that specifically is through the PayPal link in the description box below. Or if you're Canadian, an e-transfer to SandeeLovas@gmail.com. All of that money goes specifically towards his bills. Because I have to go out tomorrow and pick up more of his medication. And his medication keeps him alive. So, well, it helps because it's an anti-nausea medication. He has kidney disease. Without it, cats tend to starve themselves to death. But as long as he gets that medication, he keeps on eating and then he stays healthy. And you would never know he's 17 by the way he acts. Like, if it wasn't for his kidney issues, you'd think he's half his age. Like, he still plays quite aggressively with Lanier. He can still jump up really high onto the bed, onto the back of the couch. His hearing is fine. His seeing is fine. You would never think that cat was 17. The skeptical leftist, I'd better focus on work. Thanks for the stream and have a good night. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Super appreciate it. I don't think we're going to get an answer tonight on Saskatchewan. But I'll be able to update people on my Halloween stream. So there will be a tiny bit of politics, I guess. But I tend to do my Halloween stream. Well, last year I did it in costume. This year I'm probably going to do it in costume. Oh, and they're jumping the NDP there. It just feels weird to talk about politics when I'm dressed up as a vampire. Because of course I'm going to dress up as a vampire. I did it last year. I'll do it again this year. Because I always dress up as a vampire, any excuse I get. So I will be doing the live stream dressed as a vampire. And it just feels weird talking about politics when you're dressed as a vampire. Like, I remember seeing news reports from like morning news or something, and they have to cover like a tragic story, but it's Halloween and they went into work dressed as a clown or something. And it's just the cognitive dissonance going on there is just so weird. Five, four, three, two, one. There was no change. But there's definitely more leading, but as is, I think... No, they need 61 seats, I believe it is. Nope, 31 seats. So right now, if everything holds strong, then the Conservatives will be reelected in. That's enough for a majority right there. That's just so disappointing. Yeah, they only need 31 seats. So unless a lot of those swing back, which is unlikely because that's where they're leading, then it looks like the Conservatives are going to win this one again. Which again, it's so disappointing because the amount of hurt that they do to people, you know? And a lot of people just don't seem to care about how much the Conservative policies hurt vulnerable people, marginalized people. They just don't care. All they care about is the catchphrases, the social media. They're angry and they just want other people to suffer. That's disappointing. Because I was hoping it'd be 3 losses for the Conservatives in a row, because then that would set like a very strong statement. But if they can squeak this out, even though Scott Moe used the notwithstanding clause to take away the rights of trans children, like, what do you even say at that point? Like, I wish I could leave this on a happier note, but from the looks of it, the Saskatchewan party is going to win. The Conservatives are going to win. Just hugely disappointing there. Sheldon saying that Trump announced a press conference at Mar-a-Lago tomorrow at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Ah. All of his press conferences are just going so bizarre. John Martinez, I'm dressing up like my dad for Halloween because he was a Chicago gangster. Ooh, interesting. I love dressing up as a vampire whenever I have the excuse. Jacqueline, good night, left in the box. And to all the sweet cats, I lost my playful 18-year-old cat so suddenly just last week. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about it. So it now makes me think that I missed a health problem. Oh, well, cats. At that age, it could be anything. It could just be a heart attack, a stroke. Like, they suffer from those things too. We just do the best we can. But yeah, Halloween stream this week, Thursday. It's Halloween. There won't be a leftist mafia. I don't believe there will be a power report because, well, no, there might be a power report. I know the leftist mafia for sure is Wednesday, but there might be a power report. But I will be doing it in costume and revealing the book I wrote. I wish we could leave this on better news. I hate rewarding people for doing horrible things that hurt people. And that's what this feels like it is, that the Conservatives are being rewarded for doing policies that actively hurt people. And then the people in that province will wonder, like, why does life there suck so much? Because their education system is falling apart, their healthcare is falling apart. They have, like, I believe they have, like, the lowest ranking of satisfactory in the country, which is just bizarre then that they would then re-elect in the Conservatives. Like, really ask yourselves, like, over the past 4 years of the Conservatives, how much of your life actually improved? Like, where has it actually improved so much you think they deserve another term? But I'd be interested to see what the turnout is, because if we look at the turnout in, like, BC, 57% turned out, and that one was neck and neck. But if you look at the turnout in New Brunswick, it was 66%, which is actually quite huge, which is sad that that's huge. And then the Liberals had a very strong win. So it could be that nobody, like, the turnout is really low, and whenever the turnout is low, Conservatives win. I don't think I'm going to be listening to video anymore, so I might as well take these out of my ear holes. Oh, they hurt. Okay, well, why don't I just switch back over to the main screen for a moment? Because I think I'm going to be calling it a night, because I have a busy day tomorrow with lots of plans and things of that sort. I don't think I'll be doing another live stream before the Halloween live stream. So I'll update everyone on the Saskatchewan live stream, or on the Saskatchewan election, on the Halloween live stream, but right now it's not looking good. I need to eat like scoops of peanut butter and go to bed. And feed my cats. And unwind, take off my makeup, all that sort of stuff. John Martinez saying smegly. Nah, these are red hot peeps that are cinnamon. I used to not eat peeps at all until these were made. Best peeps ever. I think peeps, they're in Canada, but I think they're more popular. They're more of an American thing, I think. Right now, if you are a patron, you get a sneak peek of the Halloween show. Just saying, if you're a patron, you get a sneak peek of the Halloween show. And there's going to be more extras if you become a Jack in the Box tier member of my Patreon. And what some of those extras will be announced also in my live stream on Halloween. I'm looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun. Finally be able to talk about my book, like really talk about it. But again, I'm still super nervous that my autistic brain is telling me that, oh no, it's good, it's fine. But then somebody else will point out to me, is like, did you not read, like, did you see what you put down? This is horrible. And then suddenly it clicks like, oh, now I get it. And I don't know why that happens, but that happens sometimes because I'm just so hyper focused on a certain element of it or a certain perspective of a certain thing that that's all I see. But then as soon as I see the reaction of somebody else to it, it will suddenly dawn on me that that's how more people will understand it. That they're not going to understand it the way that I do, and that this is the reaction. So I'm actually kind of worried that's what's happening with my book right now, is that I see it in a certain way and it's not bad to me, but then as soon as other people see it and read it, they'll be like, wow, this is a hot piece of trash. I'm super worried about it. Bad Lefty, I made it, yay! Well, I'm about to sign off for the night because it is 12:35 a.m. here. And I need to unwind a bit before I go to bed at like 2. So unfortunately, not great news with Saskatchewan. Well, no more tomorrow morning and stuff, but I'll fill people in on my Halloween stream, which I'm really looking forward to. And thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you everyone for the super chats. Thank you to the people who have signed up to become patrons already. I have an Amazon wish link in the Amazon wish list in the description box below. Please check it out if you would like to help out but can only afford something like a one-off. Something from that list will always help. It ranges in price from like $1,000 to items that are like $12. Some things are just wishful thinking on that list. And I add things from it from time to time and take things off, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And thank you to the mods. But yeah, thank you to you guys. You guys help keep me going. Having somebody to chat with during this, to interact with, really helps. And the support that I just get from everyone is amazing. And it really does help keep me going. So, with all that said, I think I'm going to sign off. So, salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.